Inside of the fog, kill anyone as you please, the only rule is to kill. Spare no effort, the only way to become stronger is to constantly be surrounded by death. Only through such experiences will you be able to become the most dazzling cultivator of Shuiyu. If you want to join the great competition of Shuiyu and leave Shuiyu, you must prove that you are strong and must achieve glorious accomplishments. Those were the last words people heard before drowning in the black fog. The king rose both his hands and started making some hand movements. It looked strange, as if he was casting a strange type of magic. The black fog was unceasingly rolling through the atmosphere until it gradually became calm. Inside the black fog, a different scene was occurring. What's that? The spectators were shivering. The black fog started to turn into a clear gray bubble. They could clearly see through the fog. Inside the clear fog, they could see the young and outstanding cultivators. However, what astonished the crowd was that the people inside, even though they were all very close to each other, it seemed like they were unable to see the other person. The people inside couldn't see through the clear fog? What's going on? The crowd looked stupefied. How strange. The people who were inside the fog looked like they had lost all sense of direction. Some people were separated by 2 or 3 meters but couldn't see the other person. They were clumsily moving around and many were moving very cautiously. The people in the crowd raised their heads and looked at the king. He was still moving his hands. They couldn't understand what was happening. It was an illusion. Indeed, the people inside were trapped inside an illusion created by the king. Black fog, whispered people in the crowd. They understood what it really meant at that moment. Those inside the fog had become blind and their senses were restricted. They were prisoners inside an illusion. The king had created an illusion for them. Before being made a prisoner of that gray bubble, the competitors heard the king's last sentence. They could kill other people as they pleased. After having heard that sentence, it seemed like they had all been transported to a completely different world. A very strange one. Lin Feng and Meng Qing were no longer together. They could no longer see the other person. A moment before, they entered the fog together, but now, they had been completely separated from the other. It's an illusion. Lin Feng raised his head and looked in front of him. The full moon and the crowd of people had disappeared. The only thing left was a palace, an extremely large palace. It seemed like it had no end. Lin Feng had the impression that he was alone inside an extremely large room, and on top of that, it seemed like that palace had no end. Anyone who could notice the drastic changes in that landscape could understand that it was an illusion created by the king, but then again, knowing that it was an illusion would not help them. They were still trapped inside the illusion and everything seemed real to them. It seems like a bloodbath will be inevitable in here, thought Lin Feng. He then immediately started walking. He didn't stay where he was trying to find a solution to break the illusion. He first wanted to find Meng Qing and then he would think about the rest. The people confined in the illusion weren't like the majority of those outside. They were outstanding cultivators. There wasn't a single weakling. Lin Feng was worried about Meng Qing, even if she was very strong. It looked so real. Lin Feng was calmly walking in that palace very slowly. The floor was made of blue stone. Suddenly, many voices started echoing in the air, and then it became silent again. That vast area didn't look like an illusion, it looked very real. Lin Feng arrived inside a room and suddenly a powerful qi enveloped his body which surprised him. Immediately after, the sound of a chaotic wind rushed towards him. Lin Feng smiled coldly and released a terrifying energy. It was the energy of his murderous sword. It rose into the air and it made the entire palace vibrate. The facial expression of the person who had just attacked him changed drastically. It seemed like there were restrictions inside of that bubble. It seemed impossible to remove the effects of the illusion. One could only rely on one's intuition and hearing to determine if there was another person near them. That person had only been able to hear Lin Feng's steps as he waited to ambush him, so he couldn't possibly know that it was Lin Feng that he was attacking. Wait! Shouted that person loudly, but they didn't stop launching attacks. They were saying wait, but they continued to attack the other person. Would anyone stop and trust the opponent who just attacked them? Impossible. In that place, the sound of breathing was the only way to determine if the opponent was alive or not. Who would trust the other person? The person had noticed that Lin Feng's energy had halted, but he still did not stop his attack on Lin Feng. Lin Feng had no other choice but to defend himself. Die! shouted Lin Feng furiously. His sword qi whistled through the air and pierced into the opponent's fist. Blood burst forth into the air. The one who had attacked Lin Feng could no longer use his hand, but it did not stop there. At the moment when Lin Feng's hand and the other person's fist collided, that person gave a horrible shriek. Lin Feng's qi sliced the opponent's hand in two, then their forearm, then their arm, and ultimately removed their head. The first cultivator of the Xian Qi layer had died. What a monstrous strength! Under the light of the full moon, the crowd all lifted their heads and looked at the scene. It made them shiver. They couldn't sense Lin Feng's energy, but they could see the result of the battle. The gray bubble was even vibrating under the immense power. Lin Feng had attacked once and instantly killed a cultivator of the Xian Qi layer. The most surprising thing was that Lin Feng was attacked by surprise by his opponent. A silhouette emerged from the black fog which astonished the crowd. It was a corpse. It was the person who had just been killed by Lin Feng. After dying, the bodies were thrown out of the illusion. It was an illusion, but people could still be killed inside. That illusion was terrifying. In the illusion, Lin Feng had killed someone and then the person vanished. That stupefied him. He was thrown out of the illusion? He looked like he didn't understand. Had the person just been ejected from the illusion, or were they actually dead? He frowned and then concluded that person was dead. A moment before, the blood had been real. Besides, at the moment when the illusion had started, the king had said that they could kill as they pleased. Even though the illusion was a fake world, the death inside it was completely real. What a boring game, thought Lin Feng. This was a game created by the king. He was using the lives of young geniuses as toys. In order to choose the most outstanding cultivators, he could have set up a huge fighting arena and organized a tournament. But instead, he had chosen to put them in an illusionary world where they were blinded by blackness. In such circumstances, people would just randomly kill each other until only the strongest were left. Even if all those people had incredibly high natural abilities, wasn't it useless? Their talent and lives didn't matter to the king. What he wanted was to see the final victory of his game. The others didn't matter if they died, it just meant that they were worthless. Ah! A horrible shriek spread in the air on Lin Feng's right, which surprised him. He started to think about the situation. A moment before, the one who attacked me by surprise came from my left, and that shout came from my right, thought Lin Feng. It seemed like the palace was composed of endless rooms. There were people fighting on his left and on his right. Oh, and in front of me as well. Lin Feng was suddenly dumbstruck. There was a door in front of him, and there were doors on his left and right as well. Behind those doors there were people. 9 large square-shaped rooms constitute the palace. Sharp lights twinkled in Lin Feng's eyes. He raised his head and moved forwards obliquely. There was also something above. Lin Feng suddenly frowned. Doors, there were more doors. All those who were competing were behind different doors. It's a death game. This illusion is obviously a death game, thought Lin Feng, whose heart was gradually being invaded by coldness. Lin Feng was surrounded by people. Lin Feng couldn't forget that detail. Behind each door, there was a terrifyingly strong cultivator. Huh. At that moment, Lin Feng frowned. He turned around and saw something not far in front of him. A pair of eyes furtively glanced at him from there. As expected, there are people under me as well, thought Lin Feng, as if he had suddenly understood something. After furtively glancing at Lin Feng, that person slowly moved back into the floor, pretending that they didn't see anything. Lin Feng smiled as if he found the situation amusing. Wait, shouted Lin Feng in a deep voice which surprised the person. They couldn't just continue leaving. They could only see Lin Feng's smile in the darkness. He looked amused. I didn't know that you were here, Your Excellency. No problem, first come here and then we'll talk, said Lin Feng while smiling, which surprised his interlocutor. That person suddenly looked extremely irresolute. A subtle sound emerged in the atmosphere. That person smiled, their lips were shaking. Their face turned deathly pale, they were terrified. The top of the person's head burst open and blood gushed out to create a blood fountain. It was terrifying. Lin Feng was also surprised when he saw that. Under that person there was somebody else that emerged through the door. How cruel, thought Lin Feng, feeling a chill run through his heart. Immediately after, he moved forwards and released a thick and dense deadly energy. At that moment, the original person's face was completely still. There was not a trace of life in their body. Lin Feng moved towards the body slowly, step by step. In the room under his feet, there was absolutely no sound, but Lin Feng knew that there was someone. And that person's actions were extremely cruel. Lin Feng jumped down in a flash and a rumbling sound filled the air. A hole the size of a door immediately appeared beneath him. Lin Feng allowed himself to fall into it. A terrifying deadly energy enveloped Lin Feng's body, which surprised him. In front of him there was a huge stone which had transformed into a spike. It was shooting towards his chest at full speed. It was extremely fast. Zhang Shan. Lin Feng's facial expression suddenly looked ice cold. That true cultivator was a core disciple of the Hao Yu sect, Zhang Shan. What a coincidence, said Lin Feng coldly. His hand through the air while releasing monstrous amount sword energy as a whistling sound emerged in the air. The extremely sharp spike broke into pieces and disappeared. Lin Feng's sword energy was much sharper than a sharpened spike. Zhang Shan moved his hands and in a flash, all the rocks in the area started to shoot towards Lin Feng. Rumbling sounds emerged in the atmosphere as the rocks were broken by the sword energy. Zhang Shan was also pushed backwards from the collision. He was fixedly staring at Lin Feng. He hadn't thought that he would come across Lin Feng so early. The person that he wished to encounter the least was Lin Feng. Lin Feng had been able to kill 12 cultivators of the Xianqi layer. Lin Feng didn't rely on influence or other people to protect him. He was an authentic hot-blooded cultivator. Even though Zhang Shan had recently broken through to the second Xianqi layer, just like Lin Feng was able to kill cultivators of the third Xianqi layer, which Zhang Shan wouldn't even dare to attempt. The Hao Yu sect is filled with pathetic cowards, as expected. Lin Feng looked calm and detached. He then moved towards Zhang Shan step by step, which sent a shiver down Zhang Shan's spine. Lin Feng, the problems between the Hao Yu sect and you should be solved by Chu Zhanpeng and you. We are not enemies. There is no need for you to kill me, said Zhang Shan in a weak and timid voice. He didn't dare fight against Lin Feng. We are not enemies? Lin Feng smiled in an ice-cold way. Zhang Shan's words were ridiculous. Lin Feng pointed at the corpse and said in a cold and detached way, "Were you and him enemies? I don't think so, but you still attacked him by surprise and killed him. Can you explain that?" Zhang Shan was surprised. He was inside the black fog. He was obviously prepared to kill people. He had seen the opportunity and instantly killed the other person. He had an opportunity, of course, he couldn't let it slip. But Lin Feng was asking him for a reason and Zhang Shan didn't know how to reply. Killing people weaker than you doesn't require a reason. If I have to give a reason, let's just say that it is because you are a member of the Hao Yu sect. That's a sufficient reason for you to die, said Lin Feng, whose deadly energy was becoming denser and denser. He then continued slowly walking towards Zhang Shan, which made the latter narrow his eyes. Ice-cold lights were flashing through his eyes. A thick and heavy energy emerged from his body. It was his spirit. A mountain spirit appeared behind him. "Killing me will not be so easy," shouted Zhang Shan while raising his hand and swiping it through the air. In a flash, a huge rock shot towards Lin Feng, emitting rumbling sound. The rock was large enough to mash Lin Feng's body into paste. Lin Feng was calmly looking at the rock that was hurtling towards him with the aim of turning him into a puree. He waved his hand and a terrifying sword energy emerged from his fingers. Boom! The rock was sliced open, the sword, and then burst into powder. After destroying the rock, Lin Feng looked at Zhang Shan. He was trying to escape in another direction at his fastest speed. What a deceitful guy! Lin Feng smiled coldly as he moved with the wind. His movements were made at an incredible speed. Zhang Shan, whose escape was chaotic, suddenly started shaking. He turned around and saw a terrifying sword energy moving towards him. His facial expression drastically changed. Lin Feng was so fast that he had already arrived behind his opponent. His terrifying sword energy was moving closer, and it felt like it was going to lacerate his entire body. "Don't kill me!" shouted Zhang Shan furiously. His entire body, which was as large as a mountain, launched towards Lin Feng again. He was so desperate that his fight or flight reflex had instinctively caused him to turn and fight. "Not kill you." Lin Feng was releasing deadly energy. His hand moved down and a deafening sound filled the atmosphere. A sword light appeared and the gigantic mountain spirit was split apart. Jiang Shan was astonished. Lin Feng's sword attacks were extremely powerful. "Get lost!" shouted Jiang Shan furiously when he saw that his rock spirit was being suppressed. His entire body transformed into a small mountain as he rushed through the air. His entire body was surrounded by rocks which were orbiting him. Jiang Shan's entire body seemed just like a sturdy mountain as he threw himself at Lin Feng. He was extremely quick. He started to release a powerful energy as he rushed forward. If Lin Feng took the attack head-on, if he didn't die, he would be severely disfigured. "The wind!" shouted Lin Feng in a deep voice. He immediately retreated with the speed of the wind. He then slowly raised a pure qi sword which was filled with deadly energy. "Come and face me if you want to kill me," shouted Jiang Shan furiously when he noticed that he couldn't even touch Lin Feng's clothes. Lin Feng was so fast that he could dodge while maintaining the distance between them. Lin Feng ignored Jiang Shan as the power contained in his pure qi sword was growing stronger and stronger. It was terrifying. "Die!" shouted Lin Feng furiously. A deadly qi filled the air. The entire atmosphere was filled with the whistling sound of his sword. Immediately after, his sword descended and moved towards Jiang Shan. The ground under Lin Feng's feet cracked and a silhouette rose from beneath him. Lin Feng's sword which he was using to attack Jiang Shan slightly shook. The person who had emerged was filled with killing intent. "Jiang Shan, kill him!" shouted another voice suddenly. Another silhouette descended from the ceiling and moved towards Lin Feng. That person was releasing a deadly energy. That person's target was Lin Feng. There was one person in front of Lin Feng, one person under and another above. There were 3 people and they were all attacking Lin Feng at the same time. "Die!" When Jiang Shan noticed what was happening, he seemed to regain all his confidence. He immediately stopped all thoughts of retreat and moved towards Lin Feng again. Lin Feng looked extremely cold. The deadly energy around him was extremely powerful. Besides, Jiang Shan was also ready to risk his life to kill Lin Feng. Even though Lin Feng was certain that he could kill Jiang Shan, he wasn't so sure about the 2 others who were attacking him. If he decided to fight, the situation would be extremely dangerous. Therefore, Lin Feng thought that it was better to leave than to kill Jiang Shan. His body turned and in a flash he rushed back. Explosive sound spread in the air. It came from the place where Lin Feng was just standing. The atmosphere seemed like it was going to turn into powder under such a dense concentration of attacks. "It is a good thing that I am quick," thought Lin Feng. Lin Feng could sense the restrictions in that palace. A moment before, when the others attacked him by surprise, if he wasn't fast enough, he would have died a cruel death. Even though his attacks were powerful, what was the point if he took the enemy's attacks? Even if the opponents were not as strong as him, if their attacks reached his body, they would still cause lethal injury. Lin Feng's facial expression looked ice cold. He then flew into the air and looked at the 3 silhouettes in front of him. Those 3 people were Jiang Shan of the Haoyu sect, Luo Yuntian of the Luoxia sect and Du Guyi. Luo Yuntian was the best disciple of the Luoxia sect. The fact that he wanted to kill Lin Feng wasn't surprising. The other person was probably from the Du Gu clan. Lin Feng had humiliated Du Gushang in the past and Du Gu Shao. Du Guyi was probably from the same clan as them. The fact that those 3 people weren't able to kill Lin Feng even when using a surprise attack caused them all to pull a long face. Jiang Shan and Luo Yuntian had broken through to the 2nd Xianqi layer, while Du Guyi had broken through to the 3rd Xianqi layer. A moment before, they couldn't kill Lin Feng. It seemed like with Lin Feng's reflexes, fighting against him wouldn't be so easy. Besides, at the same time, many people around the Xiangjiang Lake were watching the scene with Lin Feng and the 3 attackers. Lin Feng was fighting alone against 3 people. What would be the outcome of that battle? Besides, the crowd could also see what the others were doing. More than a dozen people had already died inside that bubble. They had been heartlessly slaughtered. Inside that bubble, nobody was a saint. Somewhere above Lin Feng there was the pure and holy Meng Qing. She looked incredibly beautiful as she was looking extremely hard for Lin Feng. She was going to every single room as she searched for him, but all she could see was the remnants of battle. At the moment when she was about to go downstairs, a loud sound emerged. Suddenly a person appeared before her. It was the officer of the Imperial City Guard, Shi Qiang. His woman. Shi Qing was surprised, and then a cold light flashed through his eyes. Meng Qing was Lin Feng's lover, and because of Lin Feng, Shi Qiong had lost the woman he loved. Duan Xian Yi. Chapter 424. The Price of Attacking. Meng Qing didn't feel like paying attention to Shi Qiong, but when she saw that he was looking at her with evil intentions, she couldn't help but release an ice-cold qi which rushed straight for him. Haha! Such a warm breeze, grinned Shi Qiong. Last time Lin Feng had crushed his pride and taught him a lesson. After that, he locked himself away in cultivation and practiced until he broke through to the next layer. At that moment, Shi Qiong had broken through to the 4th Xianqi layer. Amongst the group of people, he seemed to have the highest cultivation level. Nobody could compare to him. After all, the high officials were not inside the fog. Lin Feng, you stole my woman, now I will have revenge. Wait until we meet. I will look forward to see your reaction. Thought Shi Qiong coldly. After having broken through to the 4th Xianqi layer, he had gone to see Duan Xian Yi, but she ignored him. In her eyes there was only Lin Feng. No matter how high Shi Qiong's cultivation level became, Duan Xian Yi would not even look at him. Shi Qiong hated Lin Feng. At that moment, a small sound emerged in the atmosphere. Shi Qiong was surprised. He suddenly moved back to see what was happening, and noticed a silhouette emerging near them. He frowned as a cold light flashed in his eyes. When Ling Tian saw Meng Qing and Shi Qiong, he was surprised. He then immediately gave a strange smile and said, "You guys continue with what you were doing. I didn't see anything." When Meng Qing heard Ling Tian, she released an ice-cold energy towards him, but Ling Tian simply ignored her. He smiled and said, "I will go and kill some other people. I won't bother you." When he finished talking, he turned back and walked away. At that moment, he also knew that the palace was divided into 9 rooms and that there were people everywhere, above and under, as well as on each of his sides. Therefore he wasn't worried about a lack of people to kill. At that moment, Meng Qing didn't know that the one she was looking for was directly beneath her feet. Beneath them, Lin Feng and the 3 others were in a confrontation as sword energy emitted whistling sounds through the air. It was terrifying and piercingly cold. Sword energy had invaded the entire atmosphere. Jiang Shan, Luo Yuntian and Du Guyi had separated and surrounded Lin Feng. None of them dared act carelessly. They didn't dare to look down on Lin Feng. They considered him as an extremely strong opponent. Maybe the people are watching us from outside. The most important thing now is to control my power and not reveal my full strength, thought Lin Feng. He was only guessing these things, but he was right. People really were watching them from outside the fog. They could see everyone clearly and did not have to focus on a single individual. "The 3 of you will die," said Lin Feng coldly. A deadly energy followed his words and shot through the atmosphere towards the 3 opponents. "Just because you say so? How, we will see," said Du Guyi coldly, who was directly in front of Lin Feng. At the same time, he looked at Luo Yuntian and Jiang Shan and said, "We have to give our all. If we want to kill him, we can't afford to spare any effort." "All right," said the 2 others while nodding. They couldn't afford to hold back. Gigantic rocks started to cover Jiang Shan's body as his body started to grow in size. Covered by rocks, he looked like a giant in the form of a mountain. Magnificent rosy lights then emerged from Luo Yuntian's body. But those beautiful lights were filled with deadly energy. "Die!" shouted Du Guyi, and in a flash, those 3 people threw themselves at Lin Feng while releasing their full power. Boom! Jiang Shan stomped his foot into the ground, which made the floor shake violently. Even though his entire body looked like a giant mountain, he was still able to move at incredible speed. In a few steps he had already arrived in front of Lin Feng and unleashed a heavy punch into the air. That punch was filled with endless strength and contained the will to crush Lin Feng. Lin Feng's hand shook and a sword immediately appeared. Then, rumbling and cracking sound filled the air. A crevasse started to appear on the rocky fist. Then even more cracks started to appear. However, as Jiang Shan condensed his energy, the crevasse started to disappear, as if nothing had happened. By then, Du Guyi and Luo Yuntian had arrived in front of Lin Feng. Du Guyi raised his fist, which was filled with evil energy, and unleashed his attack straight towards Lin Feng. Besides, Luo Yuntian's attack was terrifying. It was filled with endless strength and combined with his deadly energy. Wind free and unrestrained like the wind, Lin Feng's body started to gently float, As the attacks grew closer, he started to drift on the wind. In an instant, he had already appeared a great distance away. His speed was astonishing. But Du Guyi and the other two knew that this battle was going to be extremely difficult, so they were not surprised. They reacted quickly and prepared to unleash new attacks against Lin Feng. "Die!" shouted Lin Feng with incredible ferocity. His sword rose into the air as his sword energy filled the entire palace. A thunderous rumbling noise emerged in the atmosphere and the palace started to vibrate. Like the mountain. Jiang Shan's facial expression slightly changed. He took a step forward and his body grew even larger. He seemed to fully transform into a large mountain. "I will block him. You two will need to finish him off," shouted Jiang Shan. After transforming into a gigantic mountain, he threw himself towards Lin Feng's sword, as if he planned to block the sword with his life. The palace was shaking with an intense power. Jiang Shan's stone body was starting to break. Large pieces of rock were crashing around him. His gigantic stone body looked like it was going to burst into pieces. "Solid mountain!" shouted Jiang Shan furiously. He then slammed his feet into the ground again. The stones which had broken away from his body started to gather again. Lin Feng's sword didn't seem to hold the power to completely destroy him. "Die!" shouted Du Guyi and Luo Yuntian furiously. Their deadly energies were rushing through the atmosphere towards Lin Feng. Jiang Shan had decided to block Lin Feng's attacks. How could they let go of this perfect opportunity to attack? Roar! A purple light burst into reality and what seemed to be an endless stream of purple snakes came into being. The snakes immediately rushed towards his two attackers. In the blink of an eye, Du Guyi and Luo Yuntian were surrounded by the army of purple snakes which wrapped themselves around their bodies. An extremely sharp chi emerged from Du Guyi's body and started to cut through the purple snakes, but Luo Yuntian was too weak. He was struggling and it required a great deal of effort for him to break free. "Die!" A dazzling light illuminated the atmosphere as a cross-shaped light appeared. Luo Yuntian, who was struggling with the purple snakes, then felt a sudden pain coming from his chest. He lowered his head and saw a large cross-shaped wound was going through his chest. An incredible quantity of blood started to pour from his wound and his organs started to shift. His facial muscles started to twitch. He was currently suffering in untold agony. "Break!" shouted Lin Feng in a deep voice. Luo Yuntian's body abruptly started to shake violently. He could feel the organs inside starting to rupture. His face was locked in an intense suffering. After that terrifying attack, he slowly closed his eyes and collapsed. After that, he disappeared from the illusion, as if he was never there to begin with. He died. Jiang Shan's giant body was formed from stone, but his heart wasn't made of stone. It was currently violently pounding in his chest. Lin Feng's attacks had a terrifying lethality. It was monstrous. If they gave him even a small opportunity, he would use it to kill them. Lin Feng glanced at Jiang Shan for a second and then ignored him. Since Jiang Shan had incredible defense, Lin Feng decided to ignore him for the time being. He had already killed one of his attackers, now he had to kill the other one, and then he could focus on Jiang Shan. "You think I would let you attack me by surprise?" Lin Feng was staring coldly at Du Guyi. The myriad of purple snakes kept moving through the atmosphere. There were so many of them that it was like a nightmare. When Du Guyi saw Lin Feng's pitch-black eyes filled with cold deadly energy, he started to regret that he encountered Jiang Shan and Lin Feng. That opportunity seemed too good, so he couldn't let it slip. Besides, the Du Gu clan also wanted to settle a grudge with Lin Feng, so it seemed like a simple choice to attack when he saw Lin Feng. But the three of them had acted together to fight Lin Feng. They had already unleashed multiple attacks on him, and the result was that one of them had died. "It's your turn," said Lin Feng's, whose eyes looked piercingly cold. The purple snakes roared and slowly merged together, which emitted a magnificent purple radiance. They turned into a gigantic dragon which looked incomparably terrifying. Its two gigantic eyes looked extremely evil. It no longer looked like a spirit, it looked like a genuine flesh and blood ferocious beast. "Go!" shouted Lin Feng. The gigantic dragon moved towards Du Guyi, creating chaos in the air with each movement. Du Guyi was stupefied immediately after. His body transformed into a rainbow as he tried to escape. An incredible cultivator of the third Xian Qi layer. When facing Lin Feng was cowardly trying to escape, he didn't dare fight against him. Wind movement. Lin Feng smiled coldly and rushed forward with incredible speed. Each of his movements seemed smooth as if he felt no resistance. He brandished a sword and Doogie felt the incoming danger. He turned around, unleashed a powerful punch towards the sword. Roar! At that precise moment, the purple dragon appeared beside him and constricted his lower body. It opened its gigantic mouth, revealing its sharp teeth as they moved closer to Du Guye's head. Du Guye's facial expression drastically changed. He then released a terrifying pure qi which rushed towards the dragon. At the same time, he was struggling in an attempt to break free. However, in his terror, he had forgotten about Lin Feng. A moment before, there were 3 of them fighting against Lin Feng, but at that moment, he was fighting alone against Lin Feng and a ferocious dragon. Die! A sword filled with deadly energy descended. Blood splashed high into the air. Du Guye's face froze. The purple dragon bit down on his head and swallowed it, killing him in the most cruel way. Chapter 425. The Humiliation of the Hao Yu Sect. Jiang Shan was stupefied. New rocks continued to form his body, but at that moment, he no longer had any confidence. He didn't understand how Lin Feng, who had only broken through to the 2nd Xianqi layer, could defeat people of the same level and even people at the 3rd Xianqi layer in such a relaxed manner. Besides, he had the impression that Lin Feng hadn't even used all of his strength yet. Lin Feng was still hiding his real power. But even with that amount of power, those 3 attackers, 3 so-called geniuses, couldn't fight against Lin Feng in terms of both speed and strength. Even though Jiang Shan was extremely strong and had an amazing defense, he also understood that in a one-on-one battle against Lin Feng, he had no chance of survival. Lin Feng suddenly turned around and looked towards him, which made Jiang Shan's facial expression freeze. Was he going to end up like the other 2? Was he going to get slaughtered in a similar cruel way? When thinking about that, his terror started to grow. He had put great efforts into his cultivation. It hadn't been easy for him to reach such a level. It hadn't been easy to become the top core disciple of the Hao Yu sect. Everybody worshipped him and his future was supposed to be magnificent and filled with glory. Could he afford to die like that? Jiang Shan didn't want to die. He was afraid of dying. Especially after having seen Du Guye's head get swallowed by the dragon. Especially after watching the 2 other bodies disappear. Jiang Shan was starting to get the feeling that life was an extremely fragile thing. Let me go. If you let me live, I will always obey your orders, said Jiang Shan while looking at Lin Feng. He then added, if you need help with anything, I will help, even if you want to destroy the Hao Yu sect. Lin Feng looked like he wanted to burst into laughter as the situation was extremely funny. That was a genius of the Hao Yu sect. Ready to betray when things got dangerous, how ridiculous. I will deal with the Hao Yu sect myself, I don't need your help, said Lin Feng in a cold and detached tone. The head of the terrifying purple dragon was rising into the air. Its gigantic eyes were looking down at Jiang Shan, which made him start to shake with fear. Du Guye wasn't able to fight against that dragon. Jiang Shan knew that he would be even less likely to survive. So what could he do? What can I do for you to let me go? Asked Jiang Shan. No matter what, I will not let you go, replied Lin Feng calmly. He then took a step forwards, which made Jiang Shan tremble. As Lin Feng was getting nearer and nearer, Jiang Shan was growing more and more scared. Was he going to die? Jiang Shan hadn't thought that fighting against Lin Feng would lead to his death. A thumping sound then filled the air which surprised Lin Feng. He only saw Jiang Shan kneeling down and prostrating himself. There is no intense and deep-seated hatred between us. Why do you want to kill me? Please. I will do whatever you ask, shouted Jiang Shan, whose face turned scarlet red. Lin Feng looked like he was going to double over with laughter. Outside of the illusion, the crowd by the lake was watching everything. They were astonished, especially the members of the Hao Yu sect. A genius of the Hao Yu sect, their best core disciple, was kneeling down in front of Lin Feng and begging him. How ridiculous! But Lin Feng was really extremely strong. His strength was so profound that everybody was secretly shocked. After all, the people who had seen Lin Feng kill 12 cultivators of the Xianqi layer weren't numerous. They were all people from the Celestial Academy, But at that moment the whole crowd saw Lin Feng easily defeat 3 genius cultivators who belonged to 3 of the greatest spheres of influence in the country. Actually, calling them geniuses wasn't the right. The term genius was relative. It depended on whom a cultivator was facing. There was a great deal of people who were young and had already broken through to the Xianqi layer. That itself was a rare achievement, but in front of Lin Feng it meant nothing. The worst part was that those 3 people were supposed to be stronger than him. But at that moment, 2 of them were already dead and 1 of them was kneeling in front of Lin Feng begging for his life. Could they still be called geniuses? The people of the Haoyu sect were all pulling long faces. If their most talented disciple had to die, it wasn't such a big deal, but he made such a shameful display in front of everybody. Millions of people watched the most talented disciple of the Haoyu sect kneel down in front of Lin Feng and beg for his life, which gave Chu Qing the feeling that he was being slapped by each of the millions of people. His face felt extremely as hot and painful as if he was actually being slapped. Zhang Shan was making him lose face. At that moment, Chu Zhanpeng and Lin Qian, who were with the group from the holy courtyard of Shui, you also felt embarrassed. Piece of trash, if Lin Feng doesn't kill you, I will personally kill you, thought Chu Zhanpeng. He looked glum and released a deadly energy. When he watched the 3 people attacking Lin Feng, he felt relieved and confident. Lin Feng's strength wasn't as monstrous as the rumors. If Lin Feng came out, Chu Zhanpeng would definitely be able to kill him. However, Chu Zhanpeng wouldn't need to kill Zhang Shan himself. Even though he was kneeling down in front of Lin Feng, he wasn't showing any signs of forgiving him. Lin Feng was unmoving when it came to his enemies. Zhang Shan's body was then sent out from inside the illusion. Chu Zhanpeng let out a long sigh. His silhouette turned into a gigantic rock and in a flash, he appeared above the lake. Boom! A deadly energy emerged, crashed into the body and turned Zhang Shan's body into ashes. He had disappeared from the world without a trace. The wings of the legendary rock flickered and Chu Zhanpeng returned to his original position. All of the people who attacked Lin Feng had died. On the bank of the lake, an old man wearing a magnificent chongpao was hugging a dead body which no longer had a head. The old man raised his head and looked inside the illusion while releasing an ice-cold energy. The most outstanding young cultivators of the Dugu clan had been repeatedly humiliated by Lin Feng. One of them had even lost his arms. And then even the incredible Duguyi lost his life. Lin Feng was bullying the Dugu clan too much. Duguyi had wanted to kill Lin Feng and even attacked by surprise. However, if he didn't attack, would Lin Feng go out of his way to attack members of the Dugu clan? At that moment, inside the illusion, the massacre was continuing. The crowd was starting to get a rough understanding of who the strongest and most gifted ones were. Inside the illusion, there had initially been 32 people, but at that moment only 12 were left alive. Those left could be considered as the future heroes. 20 geniuses had already been killed. In the frame of that death game, people were heartlessly slaughtering their competition. Maybe they hadn't even thought about such an event when they received their invitation letter. They hadn't thought that they would end up slaughtering each other in front of millions of people in order to move on to the great competition of Shuiyu. And those who died probably hadn't thought that their lives would end in such tragic conditions. The 12 people left were attracting everybody's attention. Ling Tian was one of them. He looked extremely conceited and very arrogant, especially when he had told the crowd to remember his name. He was the one who had killed the most people so far. Each time, a single sword attack was enough to kill his opponent. His sword was extremely ruthless. Besides, Ling Tian's fellow disciple also had terrifying strength. She had already killed a few people with her own power. The things made people wonder who the 2 people of the Ling clan really were and who their teacher was. Lin Feng's accomplishments in that death game were obvious. Then there was Shi Qiong. Shi Qiong's strength was also terrifying. He had killed 2 people already, and it had been very easy for him. His opponents didn't even have a chance to fight back. At that moment, Shi Qiong was still facing Lin Feng's lover, Meng Qing. There was another person who received people's attention, Yun Fei Yang from Duanren City. At that moment it was very strange. He hadn't killed anyone. Each time he saw an opponent, he looked very scared and tried to avoid them. However, each time there was someone that tried to prevent him from leaving in order to kill him, but they never managed to stop him. Yun Fei Yang had even come across Ling Tian. He was the only person who managed to escape after fighting against Ling Tian. Therefore, Yun Fei-yang was extremely mysterious. People didn't know anything about him, they didn't even know how strong he would be if he fought. In the people's opinion, those left inside the illusion were the strongest and most talented. If they came across such people on the outside, they would be extremely scared. People were scared of Shi Qiong and Lin Feng the most. Shi Qiong was fighting against Meng Qing. If Lin Feng moved up, he would definitely encounter the situation. But Lin Feng, who was inside the illusion, couldn't see the events like the crowd outside who could see everything. At that moment he was wandering around like a blind man. Everybody was paying close attention to him. Lin Feng didn't feel at ease. This game reminded him of the memories from his previous world. He had that same old feeling of being a toy in someone else's hands. But Lin Feng also understood that his strength wasn't enough to break the illusion, so all he could do was abide by its rules and find the people he wanted to kill. Chapter 426. Planned Actions. Lin Feng didn't waste any time. There were extremely strong cultivators inside the illusion, and it was dangerous. He met Ling Tian near Duan Wuya's residence and he seemed extremely strong. Lin Feng could sense an overflowing power. There was also Shi Qiong. Shi Qiong and Lin Feng had already fought. Back then, Shi Qiong had only broken through to the third Xianqi layer, and during the battle, he revealed his flood dragon spirit. It was extremely powerful. After that, he had confined himself and cultivated even harder, which enabled him to rapidly break through and improve his strength. Those two were both powerful and harbored ill will towards Lin Feng. If Meng Qing came across them, how terrifying would that be? Besides, inside the illusion there wasn't a single weak person, even though Meng Qing was extremely strong. If Zhang Shan and the others had acted together to fight against Meng Qing instead of Lin Feng, it would have been a terrible result. Therefore, Lin Feng couldn't delay his search for Meng Qing. His silhouette flickered and he arrived in front of one of the doors. That new room was extremely vast, but there wasn't a single person inside. There was only blood stains on the ground, which meant that people had died here, but the bodies had disappeared. Lin Feng didn't stop there. His silhouette flickered again and he continued to another door to check another room. Nobody here either. Lin Feng frowned. He suddenly felt even less at ease. There were very few people, which meant that many of them were already dead. Lin Feng was extremely scared that something might have happened to Meng Qing. His silhouette flickered through the many rooms inside the illusion. Even when coming across other people, he just continued his search, and those people didn't provoke him either. After all, Lin Feng was very well known. Even though those people might have desired to fight with him, they didn't gamble when their life was at stake. It wasn't worth it. How come I can't find her? Lin Feng had already been to 20 rooms, but he still couldn't find Meng Qing. He was becoming more and more anxious and worried. We were 32 people when we entered the illusion, but there are so many rooms. Maybe there is a very low chance of encountering her, but I don't believe that after going to every single room, I still won't find her. Lin Feng was stupefied. His silhouette flickered again. Are you looking for that girl? Asked a voice from behind him. There was a figure leaning against the wall inside the room. That person was looking at Lin Feng with a resplendent smile. Lin Feng stopped walking and looked at that person. It was Yun Fei-yang. Yun Fei-yang had said that he was from Duanren City, so Lin Feng had conflicting thoughts on what he should think about him. Do you know where she is? Asked Lin Feng to Yun Fei-yang. Yun Fei-yang smiled and shook his head. I don't, but I do know that you probably won't be able to find her. Lin Feng frowned. A cold light ran through his eyes as he asked, What do you mean? Of course I am only guessing, but you have been to every single room and you still haven't found her. That's obvious. You should probably hurry up, said Yun Fei-yang, smiling as before. He looked so sluggish and bored that it made Lin Feng frown even more firmly. His eyes also grew colder as before. Lin Feng didn't look at Yun Fei-yang again and continued to move through all the rooms one more time. He came across many people, including Ling Tian's fellow disciple, but they did not fight each other. Lin Feng's top priority was to find Meng Qing. Lin Feng also saw Ling Tian, but they didn't provoke each other either. A short while after, the look on Lin Feng's face grew extremely worried. He went to every room and ended up back in the same place. What Yun Fei-yang said was really happening. He was still leaning against the wall, and he hadn't moved in the slightest. When he saw Lin Feng come back, he didn't look surprised at all. He only smiled and said, It seems like I was right. The Nine-Dragon Palace deserves its reputation. Nine-Dragon Palace. Lin Feng was stupefied. He looked at Yun Fei Yang and said, "You know what's going on here, right?" Yun Fei Yang nodded indifferently and said, "I know that they don't want you to find her. So everything you try inside the illusion will be in vain." A dangerous light flashed in Lin Feng's eyes. Someone didn't want him to find Meng Qing? Lin Feng opened his mouth. He wanted to say something, but Yun Fei Yang interrupted him. "No need to speak, I know what you want to say. I will go, but you cannot come with me. Otherwise I cannot guarantee that I will be able to find her." After saying that, Yun Fei Yang immediately left. Lin Feng was surprised and watched his back as he disappeared. He wanted to follow him but forced himself to remain. Lin Feng had the feeling that Yun Fei Yang was being honest and he didn't feel like he was being lied to. "Who doesn't want me to find Meng Qing?" thought Lin Feng with an extremely cold expression in his eyes. This illusion was created by the man by the throne. He was controlling everything, so it must be him. Maybe they were really trying to prevent him from finding Meng Qing. Apart from Meng Qing, I haven't seen Shi Qiong either, thought Lin Feng suddenly. Shi Qiong was extremely strong. The probability of him dying was extremely low. Maybe Shi Qiong and Meng Qing had encountered each other. Lin Feng didn't dare think about it. Maybe that would really happen. Besides, he was part of the Imperial City and Shi Qiong was an officer of the Imperial City Guards. Shi Qiong even dared rush to Duan Xinye's living quarters and cause trouble, which meant that he had a very important and influential background in the Imperial City. All those things could explain everything. Lin Feng felt extremely nervous. Besides, outside of the illusion, people could see everything clearly, which stupefied them. It was actually exactly the way Yun Fei Yang described the situation. They didn't want Lin Feng to find Meng Qing, and the crowd could clearly see that the different rooms of the palace continued moving around, and each time that Lin Feng was about to reach Meng Qing, the rooms abruptly changed position. Therefore, Lin Feng never had the opportunity to enter the same room. In the illusion, people had the impression that they were in a huge room, but to the people outside of the illusion, they could see how small and narrow each room actually was. All those rooms constituted a pattern of magical squares, and everybody seemed like they were only one step away from the other. The girl with Lin Feng is terrifying and dangerous. When the crowd saw Meng Qing and Shi Qiong's battle, they saw how incredibly strong Meng Qing was. But Shi Qiong was still stronger, and he had a clear advantage over her. "You're so shameless!" shouted someone on the lake, which broke the silence. Everybody was stupefied and turned towards that person. It was a young man, but he was audacious. He was insulting the person who was controlling the illusion. "Since you created this as a test, why are you not letting things happen without influencing them? Why are you preventing Lin Feng from seeing Meng Qing and Shi Qiong? You're too shameless." When Duan Feng saw that Meng Qing had been injured, his facial expression became ice cold. He couldn't help but loudly voice his opinion. The man looked at the ground and glanced at Duan Feng indifferently while smiling coldly. "I am the one controlling the illusion, so I can do as I wish. Besides, I am helping Lin Feng by doing this. If he encountered Shi Qiong, he would die," said the man calmly before adding, "Besides, since when does a little boy like you have the right to open their mouth and tell me what I have to do? Get lost." While talking, the man released a monstrous pure qi which immediately rushed through the air. In a flash, it arrived in front of Duan Feng. Duan Feng pulled a long face, but instead of moving back, he threw himself at it. He joined his hands and released his pure qi, which bombarded the atmosphere. Boom! Duan Feng's wasn't strong enough to compete. The pure qi passed through Duan Feng's attack and crashed onto his body, which caused Duan Feng to cough up blood. His body was also blown away and he crashed onto the ground. His face was deathly pale. "Old fool!" Duan Feng raised his head and insulted again. From behind his back, his spirit was released. The energy of the sealed doors was growing stronger and stronger. Sealed doors spirit. The man was surprised. He fixedly stared at Duan Feng for a while, and then quickly looked behind him towards the golden throne. Surprisingly, it was a sealed doors spirit. That was the blood spirit of the imperial clan. "Your family name is Duan?" asked the man. "Why do you care?" "Old fool!" cursed Duan Feng again. "Humph, since your family name is Duan, I will not kill you," grinned the man, and he then ignored Duan Feng. Chapter 427. Cold heart inside the illusion, two cultivators were locked in an intense battle. Meng Qing's face was covered with blood, but the coldness she released from her body was becoming increasingly powerful. The room was slowly being covered by a layer of ice, sending a piercing chill to the bone. The cold air was becoming more brutal with each passing moment. You are very stubborn. I have broken through to the fourth Xianqi layer in terms of strength and power. Lin Feng is not my equal. What is the downside to being intimate with me? Do you want me to use force? Said Xiqiong slowly while looking at Meng Qing. Meng Qing had a touching and moving expression in her eyes. She was very stubborn and tenacious. Besides, she still looked high-spirited and determined. Xiqiong initially didn't like Meng Qing. He liked Duan Xianyi. He just wanted to play with Meng Qing. He wanted to have fun with Lin Feng's lover and make Lin Feng lose face. However, he was starting to like her more and more. If Meng Qing could become his woman, that would be great. They were a good match in his eyes. Of course, that feeling was not mutually shared. When Meng Qing heard Xiqiong, she released an even stronger ice qi. The power was also growing more brutal, as if the atmosphere was going to freeze. Stop being so obstinate. You cannot compete with me. And don't count on anyone coming to save you because nobody can, said Xiqiong in a cold and detached tone when he sensed that Meng Qing's ice qi was growing more intense. So that's how it is. An officer of the Imperial City Guards likes to take advantage of other people's women. A sluggish voice sounded which stupefied Xiqiong. Immediately after, he saw someone open the door of the room and slowly enter. Huh. Xiqiong frowned when he saw the person who entered. Immediately after, his eyes were filled with murderous intent. Who do you think you are to intervene in my affairs? Said Xiqiong coldly. Immediately after, he took a step forwards and released a monstrous qi which rushed through the atmosphere towards Yunfei Yang. Die! Shouted Xiqiong furiously. A terrifying deadly energy had enveloped Xiqiong's body. Xiqiong planned to kill him for involving himself in something which had nothing to do with him. Yunfei Yang looked at Xiqiong who was moving closer and closer to him. Suddenly, the smile on his face disappeared and he released a shockingly sharp qi which created a storm around him. His clothes were fluttering under the power of the storm. Die! Xiqiong shouted while punching forwards. A dangerous light could be seen in Yunfei Yang's eyes. Not only did he not retreat, but he charged forwards instead. He raised his fist and also unleashed a terrifying punch towards Xiqiong. Boom! A terrifying wind was blasted in every direction. Their fists collided with the force of a mountain, and they remained absolutely still. Their clothes were still fluttering in the wind, and they were both looking at the other person's eyes. Get lost. Yunfei Yang slightly moved. He took an extremely small step forward, but the qi and force which he had condensed emerged from his fist. Xiqiong's body was instantly projected backwards by a few steps. How strong! Yunfei Yang's strength was terrifying. Xiqiong was unable to harm Yunfei Yang and on the contrary, he was the one who was sent flying backwards. Xiqiong was full of confidence when it came to his cultivation, but at that moment, in front of everyone, he had just been projected backwards by an absolute stranger. Someone whom nobody even knew about. Xiqiong wasn't the only one who was left astonished. The people outside of the illusion were also astonished. Yunfei Yang seemed like he was the most mysterious person of all. He didn't fight, but when he did, it was terrifying. Xiqiong had been forced backwards by such a small movement. Even though it didn't mean that he was definitely stronger than Xiqiong, it at least proved that his explosive power was much more tyrannical than that of Xiqiong. The fog of the illusion started to move through the atmosphere. The full moon still looked lonely and desolate, but it still hung beautifully in the sky. A few silhouettes started to appear in the crowd's field of vision. They didn't look like distant figures any longer. The light of the full moon was shining down upon those silhouettes and the calm lake beneath them. The fog had dispersed and the illusion had disappeared. The people who were inside before were now standing in front of the crowd. There were 6 people. From the 32 people who had entered the illusion, only 6 were left. Xiqiong, Yunfei Yang, Lin Feng, Meng Qing as well as Ling Tian and his fellow disciple. The others were all killed, whether it be the people of the Wanshou sect or the Yu clan. All the geniuses who belonged to those groups were dead. That was an unprecedented loss for them. Besides, the 6 people left were also the strongest people from the group. Everybody had seen their strength with their own eyes. However, Ling Tian was the one who had killed the most people. Nobody had dared to provoke Shi Qiong, but Meng Qing fought against him. She hadn't spared any effort and managed to suppress him until Yun Feiyang appeared and forced her back. Lin Feng's strength was obvious from the ambush on him. These 6 people remained firm and tenacious and managed to come out of the illusion alive. That was already enough evidence that they were extremely gifted cultivators. Unfortunately, the other geniuses were all dead and were used as stepping stones for the surviving cultivators. A short time before, they had all been high-spirited and full of life. They all wished that everybody would remember their name throughout Xueyu. But reality was cruel. No matter how strong they had been, their opponents were even stronger. The moonlight was shining down upon Lin Feng's body. He turned around and looked towards Meng Qing. He could see that Meng Qing's face was deathly pale and there was traces of blood around her mouth, which sent a shiver of fear down his spine. Meng Qing. Lin Feng's silhouette flickered and he immediately landed next to Meng Qing. He took out a pill and put it in Meng Qing's mouth. Meng Qing opened her mouth and swallowed the pill. When she saw Lin Feng, the ice around her body disappeared in a flash, and a brilliant and magnificent smile appeared on her face. Next to that smile, it seemed like the beauty of the moon didn't exist any longer. She looked so beautiful in Lin Feng's eyes. The crowd also found that smile to be so beautiful that it made their hearts accelerate. What a beautiful woman! Her clothes were whiter than snow, and the moonlight was shining upon the fine gauze on her face. She really looked like a celestial being. When Lin Feng saw that Meng Qing's cheeks were regaining a trace of color, he slowly turned around and looked towards Yun Feiyang and Shi Qiong. He only glanced at Yun Feiyang for a second and then looked at Shi Qiong with a merciless glare. Lin Feng's face was filled with pure killing intent. As if Shi Qiong had sensed Lin Feng's glare, he turned around and looked at Lin Feng. You don't deserve to be her lover, she should be my woman. Sword. Lin Feng ignored what Shi Qiong said and immediately moved forwards while slowly raising his hand. A whistling sound emerged in the air around Lin Feng. Lin Feng suddenly condensed a terrifying sword energy and pure qi into a sword which materialized in his hand. Shi Qiong frowned and groaned. At the same time, he also released a powerful qi which moved straight towards Lin Feng. Both their energies collided in the air. What a terrifying power! Shi Qiong's strength is monstrous, thought the people in the crowd while looking impatient. Lin Feng and Shi Qiong were both geniuses. They had both passed the first test. Finally, the crowd had the opportunity to see them fight, so they were impatient to see the outcome of the battle. But Shi Qiong had broken through to the 4th Xianqi layer and Lin Feng had only broken through to the 2nd Xianqi layer. Even though he was able to kill cultivators of the 3rd Xianqi layer, fighting against Shi Qiong who was of the 4th Xianqi layer was a much more difficult task. The crowd thought that the situation could be worse for Lin Feng. However, Yun Feiyang, the mysterious man, was able to send Shi Qiong flying back, even though he was at the 4th Xianqi layer. Yun Feiyang must be extremely strong. That's enough, said the old man at that moment while glancing at Shi Qiong and Lin Feng. He then said slowly, You 6, thanks to your determination and tenacity, have passed the first test. You are all quite good. With the 8 high officials you are now 14 people. Now all of you can exchange a few pointers. Let's see who the strongest ones in this group are. You can now freely fight against whomever you wish, said the old man indifferently, which astonished everybody. They could fight against whomever they wished, the battles of the 6 remaining people, and the 8 high officials were definitely going to be incredible. The crowd was bursting with excitement. People rarely had the opportunity to see the 8 high officials in battle. Not many people knew exactly what their cultivation levels were these days. Lin Feng glanced at the old man in a cold and detached way. Yun Feiyang was right. If he wasn't able to find Meng Qing, it was because of the old man who was controlling the illusion. The old man had done it on purpose. As if the old man had seen Lin Feng looking at him, he said coldly, The people who are at weaker cultivation levels should fight against the other weak ones first. It would be a pity for them to die at the beginning fighting a strong opponent. The old man was obviously mocking Lin Feng because Shi Qiong's cultivation level was higher than Lin Feng by 2 whole layers. Chapter 428. The Flood Dragon Warp Fist. Your name is Yun Feiyang? Shi Qiong asked after the old man finished talking. Shi Qiong was fixedly staring at Yun Fei Yang. He knew that the crowd below had been able to see them in the illusion for a moment, so they had seen how Yun Fei Yang had made him move back. They knew about it, so Shi Qiong felt humiliated. He had to take his revenge. Shi Qiong wasn't in a hurry to kill Lin Feng. He was only in the second Qianqi layer. Killing Lin Feng would be easy. The only thing that scared him a little bit was Lin Feng's Black Lotus. Indeed, replied Yun Fei Yang indifferently. He looked sluggish again, which gave the impression that he was despised by Shi Qiong. Such an indolent attitude made Shi Qiong pull a long face, and he said, "We will fight first." Yun Fei Yang smiled and glanced at Lin Feng. He then said, "It seems like I will be the first one to fight." Yun Fei Yang made a step to immediately land above the lake. His clothes were fluttering in the wind. His sluggish appearance disappeared and sharp lights started flashing in his eyes. "Come, let's fight," said Shi Qiong, moving towards the air above the lake, as well while releasing an insane amount of qi. His entire body seemed like it was filled with infinite strength. Lin Feng looked cold and detached. Since Shi Qiong and Yun Fei Yang were fighting first, he had to wait for his turn. "Let's see your strength," said Shi Qiong in a cold and detached way. In the illusion, Yun Fei Yang had pushed Shi Qiong backwards. Shi Qiong couldn't forgive him. "As you wish." Yun Fei Yang's hair and clothes were fluttering in the wind. Everybody was looking at Yun Fei Yang, who said he came from Duanren City. Apparently, his strength was enough to face the most outstanding disciples of the country. At that moment he really had the air of an extremely strong cultivator, natural and unrestrained. Shi Qiong released a terrifying strength with his pure qi. A hideous and ferocious-looking flood dragon then appeared and rushed towards Yun Fei Yang, as if it wanted to eat him alive. Flood dragon. Warp fist. Yun Fei Yang's eyes looked ice-cold. He looked a bit surprised as well. Warp fist was a D-level skill of medium quality. It was like a dragon filled with infinite physical strength. It had a monstrous explosive power. Shi Qiong condensed his pure qi. At that moment, the flood dragon had its own body and was accumulating its own type of energy. Kacha kacha. The sound of cracking bones emerged from Yun Fei Yang's body. They suddenly saw his Chong Pao flutter in an even more violent fashion as the whistling sounds in the air became even more intense. His entire body looked like it contained unlimited strength which dated back to ancient times. It was shocking. "What are those?" wondered people in the crowd when they saw the powerful skills. Both of them were extremely strong and fast. Duanren City has given birth to such a strong cultivator? Shi Qiong's facial expression looked ice-cold. He then added, "Since you are an expert at using physical strength, let's see how you plan to receive my fist." While talking, Shi Qiong's flood dragon started to rise up in the air. It looked extraordinary. "As you wish," said Yun Fei Yang as if he only knew how to repeat those 3 words again and again. Shi Qiong could just fight as he wished. Did it matter to him? At that moment, Yun Fei Yang's qi was also rising into the air. Roar! The flood dragon roared. Shi Qiong took a huge step and released his brutal qi, and his flood dragon started moving towards Yun Fei Yang. Rage! Yun Fei Yang took a few steps forward and a furious sea of energy surged into his hand and condensed. It was a spectacular sight to behold. Then his deadly qi was released. Those 2 people stepped forwards. The earth and the sky seemed to shake under their pressure. It was scary and majestic. "What a monstrous strength," thought the crowd while looking at those 2 people's steps. That battle was breathtaking. The people's hearts started pounding. Those 2 people were at the same level. They had both broken through to the 4th Qianqi layer. The most terrifying was that their explosive power was much more brutal than that of a normal cultivator of the 4th Qianqi layer. If Lin Feng fought against Shi Qiong, he would definitely lose. Some people suddenly thought Shi Qiong's strength was way too monstrous. If he had a cultivator of the 3rd Qianqi layer in front of him, he would kill them in a flash. Roar! Another roar spread through the atmosphere. Those extremely loud rumbling sounds painfully pierced through some people's eardrums. It seemed like the entire atmosphere was vibrating. The atmosphere above the lake had been invaded by a qi storm, and those terrifying energies had completely enveloped Shi Qiong and Yun Fei Yang's bodies. Who had won? Who had lost? A few moments after, the explosive energy dispersed. The 2 fighters had moved backwards. Shi Qiong's clothes were ripped apart and some qi was undulating around him. Yun Fei Yang's hair looked extremely messy and his face had turned deathly pale. Both their mouths showed signs of blood. They were fixedly staring at each other. As expected, the D-level skill of medium quality, the Flood Dragon Warp Fist is extremely strong, thought Yun Fei Yang. Shi Qiong was fixedly staring at Yun Fei Yang and thought, there is some strange dark energy inside his deadly energy. Such a terrifying dark energy. If I hadn't paid attention, then that attack would have severely injured me. The two fighters were discovering how shocking their mutual strengths were. That's enough. You two are incredible geniuses, go and have a rest, said the old man slowly. At that moment, Lin Feng took a step in the air and said in a cold and detached way, wait. Huh. People were stupefied. After having witnessed Shi Qiong's monstrous strength, did Lin Feng still want to fight against him? Would he dare? You want to fight? Asked Shi Qiong in an ice-cold way while fixedly staring at Lin Feng. The latter wanted to die. Indeed, replied Lin Feng in an ice-cold way. He wouldn't be able to set his mind at ease if he didn't kill Shi Qiong. Humph, groaned the old man before saying, if you want to die, you don't need to be so impatient. Besides, Shi Qiong just finished one battle, and you want to take advantage of him because he is exhausted. Let him have a rest. If you want to fight, you can fight against somebody else first. Lin Feng coldly glanced at the old man. He was clearly protecting Shi Qiong. Since it's that way, I will fight against somebody else, replied Lin Feng indifferently. The old man looked glum. He glanced at Shi Qiong and Yun Fei Yang and said, you two can come back. Shi Qiong coldly glanced at Lin Feng, his silhouette flickered and he left the area, followed by Yun Fei Yang. Above the lake, there was only Lin Feng left and the old man who was overseeing the competition. Lin Feng wanted to fight, but against whom? Against whom will you fight? Hurry up and speak, said the old man coldly. Everybody was looking forward to seeing whom Lin Feng would choose as an opponent. Shi Qiong couldn't fight against him. Yun Fei Yang seemed to be on Lin Feng's side, so he wasn't going to choose him. The only people left were the 8 high officials and the 2 people of the Ling clan. Ling Tian was monstrously strong. He had killed the most people in the illusion. But would Lin Feng choose a woman as a first opponent? Lin Feng then glanced around at everybody. He had already met 5 of the 8 high officials before, the 2nd-ranked Yu Tianming, the 3rd-ranked Wu Qing of the Wanshou sect, the 4th-ranked Duan Wuya as well as the 6th and 7th-ranked, respectively Chu Zhanpeng and Luo Shui. He had never seen the strongest of the group, Duan Wu Dao, and it was said that the 5th and 8th ranked were brothers from the Yu clan. At that moment, Chu Zhanpeng, on the side of the holy courtyard of Shuiyu, was looking at Lin Feng in a despising way, while releasing his killing intent. After that battle, I still want to fight against Shi Qiong, so I will fight against Chu Zhanpeng later, thought Lin Feng. Finally, he looked at Ling Tian. Ling Tian was stupefied and suddenly looked ice-cold. Lin Feng seemingly wanted to choose him as a first opponent. Ling Tian and Lin Feng's battle was in any case unavoidable. Get your ass over here, said Lin Feng indifferently, which stupefied Ling Tian. Lin Feng was extremely rude when talking to him. The crowd was astonished as well. Even when facing authentically outstanding geniuses, Lin Feng was still as shocking as ever. Those people weren't like those few people of the Wanshou sect. Each and every single one of them was a dazzling and glorious genius. They were the most outstanding young people of Shuiyu. Ling Tian pulled a long face and stepped forwards, immediately arriving in front of Lin Feng, while releasing some ice-cold energy. The full moon was as brilliant as before. Its dreary light was shining upon the 2 fighters, which gave people a sad and lonely feeling. That night, some geniuses were rising but many others were falling. Those extremely strong geniuses were showing how powerful they were by taking other geniuses' lives, and only with enough bloodshed would they be able to look down upon Shuiyu. The rise and fall of the geniuses was happening in front of millions of cultivators from Shuiyu. Lin Feng had surprised the entire country many times, but on that night, would he be able to continue? Or would he fall? Everybody was impatient to see his first battle. Do you regret it? Asked Lin Feng to Ling Tian in a cold tone which surprised Ling Tian. Do you regret it? asked Lin Feng to Ling Tian in a cold tone which surprised Ling Tian. Ridiculous, what regrets could Ling Tian have? Ling Tian was staring at Lin Feng with dangerous lights twinkling in his eyes. You and I don't have any previous grudge, but you came to Yangzhou City and killed some of my troops. I, Lin Feng, must avenge them, which is why I came here to find you. When Lin Feng saw Ling Tian's expression, he correctly understood that the latter didn't care at all, and even less regretted his actions. Lin Feng's face was filled with murder. He had to make Ling Tian feel an endless regret before dying. You came indeed, and now you are courting death, replied Ling Tian while looking at Lin Feng. He then continued, I initially didn't intend to kill you, but since you have a death wish, I, Ling Tian, will help you achieve your aim. When he finished taking, Ling Tian unsheathed his sword from his back, which whistled as it cut through the air. It was then shot from his sheath and into the sky, spinning around. Ling Tian stretched out his hand and caught the spinning sword as it was falling. That sword was extremely shiny, and it looked as sharp as the autumn rain. Help me achieve my aim? Lin Feng smiled coldly and started releasing a deadly energy as his sword chi started revolving violently. He started to condense a pure chi sword in his hand. Energies were revolving and whistling through the air as they were released. In front of me, you dare to use a sword, said Ling Tian while taking a step forwards. It was as if his entire body had transformed into a sword, and he was shooting through the air towards Lin Feng. Whether I dare or not, you will see, said Lin Feng while rushing through the air as well. At that moment in his heart there was only sword energy, there was only the path of the sword. His sword was alive. What terrifying sword energies, sighed the crowd in amazement. Those two fighters weren't like Shi Qiong and Yun Fei Yang, who used terrifying amounts of qi making the atmosphere tremble. But Lin Feng and Ling Tian were using extremely refined sword qi. That kind of sword qi was the most lethal. These energies didn't look terrifying, but if they reached their opponent, only a corpse would remain. Both of the swords lacerated the atmosphere as they emitted tearing sounds around them. They weren't terrifying, but the whistling and tearing sounds like the sword cut through the air was spine-chilling. In the air, those two swords looked almost desolate as they approached each other under the full moon. It was as if those swords had been made of water. They looked almost like a dream under the moonlight. Those swords were alive, and each one was displaying its full power. Ling Tian's body suddenly spun through the air and moved back. At the same time, Lin Feng dodged the sword point which was thrust towards him. They had both avoided that attack. Both of their attacks were aimed to kill. Ling Tian looked prouder and prouder of himself. He was still looking down upon Lin Feng. He looked over and said, You're not bad at using a sword. To my surprise, you could exchange an attack with me. It was at least an energy attack. Or maybe that you have already discovered the secrets of sword fusion, but unfortunately, you are far weaker than me. On the path of sword cultivation, I will always be stronger than you. During our battle you can only die, said Ling Tian proudly. He was giving the impression that Lin Feng couldn't compete with him and that he was just wasting his time. You think that you have already won? Joked Lin Feng in a cold tone. Where did Ling Tian's sudden pride come from? I haven't yet, but it's the same as winning, there is no difference. The sword attack I just carried out was a test of your ability. I just wanted to see what you were capable of, said Ling Tian while coldly looking at Lin Feng. He then said slowly, With my next sword attack you will die. Ling Tian said that he was only testing Lin Feng. How terrifying was his real attack? A moment before, in the illusion, Ling Tian had shown how dominant he was. He was a truly powerful cultivator. Killing other people had been extremely easy for Ling Tian. He hadn't need to use his full strength at all. Well, hurry up and show me your strongest sword attack then. I'm waiting to see how you plan to kill me, said Lin Feng indifferently, which astonished Ling Tian. Lin Feng was asking him to use his strongest sword attack. He was simply asking to die. Lin Feng was as audacious as ever. He now considered Ling Tian beneath his notice. He was looking down on Ling Tian's arrogance. Ling Tian was stupefied. He narrowed his eyes, and killing intent shone in his pupils. Since you're so impatient to die, I won't drag this out, said Ling Tian proudly. In his hand appeared a bright and thin sword. He raised it and the 1,000 lights that shone from it astonished the crowd. This sword is a light energy sword. Light can pierce through everything. You cannot stop it. Being able to die under this sword is an honor for you. You can die happily. When Ling Tian stopped talking, his sword started absorbing the light energy which was around it, making it seem more dazzling. The crowd watching were blinded by all the rays of light. That sword was incredibly dazzling, and those rays of light kept moving towards Lin Feng. That sword was extremely sharp, dazzling and agile like a light. Look at the magnificence of my sword before dying. You will die content, said Ling Tian, sounding indifferent. He suddenly spun in the air and pointed his sword in the direction of the lake. In a flash, a green-blue light emerged from his sword and then immediately disappeared, as if it had never even existed. A subtle sound reached everyone's ears, stupefying them. What was going on? They had just seen a beam of light shot from the sword, and then it disappeared. That was a light energy sword? The crowd looked on blankly. They didn't understand. What exactly was so great about this sword? Zir! A sound emerged from the water of the lake. In a flash, the crowd reacted. Immediately after, a beam of light emerged from the lake where the sword was pointing, shooting into the sky. It reached a few hundred meters of altitude. After that, a column of water burst into the air. Rumbling sounds spread through the air, and the entire lake looked like it was boiling. It was an astonishing sight. What a terrifying sword, thought the crowd, dumbstruck. They hadn't even seen the attack apparently, so many were still wondering what was happening. If they blinked, they might not have even noticed Ling Tian attacking. But that sword clearly had a destructive potential. People's hearts were pounding. That astonishing sword, the light energy sword, was terrifying. When Ling Tian saw the people's facial expressions, he felt extremely satisfied with himself. Then he looked at Lin Feng again. You must be happy to die under such magnificence, said Ling Tian indifferently. His eyes were filled with arrogance. He wanted to see the fear in Lin Feng's eyes. Ling Tian's female fellow disciple was smiling with pride. That light sword had almost reached its ultimate power. It was nearly impossible to block it, even for Lin Feng. Many people couldn't even see the sword attack, so they usually died before they even unleashed their attacks. Besides, people usually couldn't feel any threat coming from the sword. The deadly power of the sword was explosive yet hidden. When the opponent saw the attack being released, it was already too late. Ling Tian wanted to see Lin Feng regret and fear him. He wanted Lin Feng to kneel down and prostrate himself. However, considering Lin Feng's current expression, he didn't show any fear and had no interest in Ling Tian. Lin Feng just looked calm, terrifyingly calm and serene. It looked like he wasn't even watching the display of power. Alright, are you done playing around? Said Lin Feng in a cold and detached way which made Ling Tian's smile freeze. Many people felt their mouths widen in shock. Play. Lin Feng was thought that Ling Tian was playing? Alright, if you're done playing around, die, said Lin Feng. At the same time, he released a monstrous deadly energy. His deadly energy was shockingly intense. It was the pure and unaltered deadly energy of a murderer. Lin Feng's body was just filled with pure murderous intention. He raised his hand and deadly energy started revolving around him. Some pure qi rolled through the air and began to condense. In Lin Feng's hand, a deadly black sword had appeared. A black air of death rolled through the air and condensed into a black sword. A deadly black sword. A black sword. People's pupils shrank. What a terrifying black sword. It was astonishing. The scariest part was that Lin Feng looked like a death god at that moment. He was standing in the sky surrounded by deadly energy. That deadly energy seemed like it could even steal the souls from its victims. The hearts of the people around the lake started pounding in fear. In the continent there are many geniuses. You're not the only one. Besides, other people have hidden their power as well. You think you are the only person who can be strong? Poor you. You're just a sad and pathetic fool. That's all. The crowd was astonished. Lin Feng's eyes were gradually turning pitch black, and the atmosphere was being invaded by deadly energy. Lin Feng then threw himself at Ling Tian. Ling Tian's heart started palpitating violently. He couldn't control himself anymore. Lin Feng's deadly energy was terrifying. He gnashed his teeth and took a step forwards. His body started shining like his light sword. He looked like a light beam inside the darkness. But at that moment, the light from the sword couldn't pierce through the darkness. It was submerged inside the deadly black energy which had filled the air. Die! Shouted Lin Feng in a deep voice. Hi's sword filled with deadly energy fell from the sky. It seemed as if nothing apart from that sword existed in the world. The deadly energy felt like it could annihilate and subjugate everything in its path. Boom! The light sword, when it collided with the deadly energy, burst into pieces. However, even though the light sword was extremely sharp and had a high explosive power, it was still nothing to this overwhelming deadly energy. The endless stream of deadly energy was unstoppable. Now on Ling Tian's face, there appeared an expression of absolute despair and hopelessness. Chapter 430. You will die. How is that possible? Ling Tian looked terrified. That terrifying deadly qi had destabilized his pace and train of thought. Besides, it had also crushed his pride. He had thought that with his light sword, Lin Feng was definitely going to meet his end. He thought that Lin Feng would never be able to stop such a powerful attack. However, Lin Feng had suddenly released that deadly energy which had shown Ling Tian how ignorant he truly was. That deadly energy had penetrated into the innermost part of his heart. It destroyed his determination, ardor and murderous intentions. It replaced them with fear and dread. That sword was filled with such a powerful, deadly energy. But Lin Feng had only broken through to the second Qianqi layer. How could this be possible? But the reality was that Lin Feng had really released that terrifying deadly energy. Dodge! Ling Tian was terrified. He had only one thought: he wanted to run away. Ling Tian started shaking with fear. Just like the laser from his sword, he shot away from Lin Feng at full speed. The deadly energy, which was bombarding its way through the atmosphere, was about to reach him. Retreat? Did he still have a chance to retreat? Ling Tian was extremely quick. One of the advantages of his light energy was speed, but Lin Feng was also extremely fast, just like the wind. The deadly energy was following Lin Feng like a black cloud crashing through the air, and he was closely following Ling Tian. He was moving, getting nearer and nearer. Lin Feng only had to attack with his sword and Ling Tian would die. However, Lin Feng didn't do that. Do you regret it? Asked Lin Feng in an ice-cold mocking tone, after which his deadly energy enveloped Ling Tian's body, making his heart jump from his chest. Did he regret it? You think that everyone else is beneath you. You came to Yangzhou City, thinking of yourself as a majestic god of war, and openly killed some of my brothers. You thought that you were untouchable. How arrogant. When you killed my people back then, did you think about the deadly consequences it would have? Lin Feng's eyes were jet black. He could kill Ling Tian at any point, but instead he was toying with him. Ling Tian was a genius. He was extremely strong, but at that moment he looked like a buffoon. Lin Feng was just playing with him like a cat would a mouse. It looked like a theater performance was being enacted. A short time before, everybody had thought that Ling Tian would easily defeat Lin Feng, but the situation had drastically changed. Ling Tian hadn't used his full strength and mocked Lin Feng. But what about Lin Feng's full strength? In the distance, Ling Tian's female fellow disciple was shaking. After hearing Lin Feng's words, she started shaking even more violently. Back then, she was the person who said the words to Ling Tian, which was why he landed in Yangzhou City and gave his display of how strong and proud he was. Back then, that girl hadn't thought about the consequences of those actions at all. She hadn't ever thought that Lin Feng would be strong enough to retaliate. At that moment, Ling Tian obviously regretted his actions. He was young and had extremely high natural abilities, but because of one small mistake, because he decided to kill a few nobodies to show off, he was standing on the verge of death. There was even a good chance of him dying for said actions. The troops he killed in Yangzhou City wouldn't have attacked him or been any threat to him. Back then he had just decided to show off and killed them for fun. He hadn't thought that killing those insignificant people could have such dire consequences. Those people were insects in his eyes. He had just wanted to kill them for his own pride and fun, so what? He had even shouted to give the message to Lin Feng that if he wanted to take his revenge, he could come and find him in the imperial city. Ling Tian hadn't thought about such consequences even in his worst nightmares. He hadn't thought that what he had done in Yangzhou City would thoroughly change his destiny. It seems like you do regret, said Lin Feng, who was moving closer and closer to Ling Tian, just like a gentle breeze. In Lin Feng's pitch-black eyes appeared an ice-cold light and he said, "I've already told you, you committed the crime of killing my Qixie troops and today I will have justice for them. Die." When Lin Feng finished talking, his deadly energy became even more terrifying. His black sword was filled with incredible amounts of deadly energy. It was a deadly energy sword. It finally descended through the air in the atmosphere. There was nothing but the murderous intent which poured from the sword. Ling Tian looked desperate, but at the same time, all of his muscles were twitching. He looked ferocious, hideous. One could see that he regretted every single action he took, but one could also see the hatred in his eyes. Ling Tian, whose talent and strength were unmatched by his peers, was going to die? Ah! When Ling Tian saw that deadly energy approach him, he shouted in frustration and grief. He closed his eyes and immediately after, what seemed like an endless ocean of deadly qi enveloped his body and swallowed him. In an instant, his entire being disappeared. Ling Tian had died, and there wasn't a single part of his body left to bury. Many people's hearts twitched when they saw Ling Tian's silhouette vanish and Lin Feng standing in the air, looking proud. Lin Feng was a terrifying cultivator. Everyone was dumbstruck. One sword was enough to kill Ling Tian. The deadly energy still filled the atmosphere around the lake. Lin Feng's sword was still filled with an endless murderous intent. He turned around and looked down at the crowd, looking majestic and domineering. Finally, he looked at one person, Shi Qiong. "Your turn, get your ass over here," said Lin Feng indifferently. The crowd felt their eyes go wide after killing Ling Tian. Lin Feng wasn't finished. He was going to target Shi Qiong next. Between Lin Feng and Shi Qiong, who would be stronger? At that moment, nobody dared to make a guess hastily. Lin Feng had left them shocked. He was extremely brutal and his power was unknown. Nobody dared to underestimate or look down on Lin Feng. Additionally, nobody dared to say a word against Shi Qiong either. Shi Qiong, when he saw that deadly energy in the air, pulled a long face. A short time before, he had despised Lin Feng and chosen Yun Fei Yang for his first battle. In his eyes, Lin Feng wasn't strong enough, so he didn't attach much importance to him. However, at this moment, he didn't dare to have such foolish thoughts about Lin Feng anymore. He understood a great deal when it came to cultivation. He had broken through to the 4th Xianqi layer. In comparison with the last time when he had fought against Lin Feng, he had become much stronger and increased the gap between them, which was also why he had stopped caring about Lin Feng. Shi Qiong hadn't thought that Lin Feng had also grown much stronger during that time. He hadn't become strong. He had become terrifying. By relying only on that deadly energy, he was able to kill people of the 3rd Xianqi layer easily in the blink of an eye. Lin Feng had only broken through to the 2nd Xianqi layer, but most cultivators of the 3rd Xianqi layer were no longer his opponents. "Come here, hurry on up," shouted Lin Feng furiously when he saw Shi Qiong remaining motionless. His voice resonated through the air. At the same time, an even more deadly energy emerged in the atmosphere and started to surround Shi Qiong's body. It was a frightening spectacle. At that moment, Shi Qiong had no choice but to give it his all and fight against Lin Feng. Shi Qiong took a step and then jumped through the air. He arrived near Lin Feng with pure qi revolving around his body. Around Lin Feng's body there was a very powerful deadly energy, and it was blocking Shi Qiong's pure qi. That endless murderous intent seemed like it could penetrate into people's hearts and make them cower in fear. "Shi Qiong, how old are you?" asked Lin Feng in a cold and detached way. Shi Qiong frowned. Why did Lin Feng ask such a strange question? 24. Replied Shi Qiong in a cold and detached tone. 24. Repeated Lin Feng before continuing. "You are a wealthy and powerful young man of the Imperial Palace. I was born in Yangzhou City. Unfortunately, that's not as glamorous as your birth. However, you are a wealthy and powerful young man. You are 24 years old. You have broken through to the 4th Xianqi layer. However, I am only 18 years old and I wasn't born into a wealthy or powerful family. I have always relied on my own power to cultivate and not my family's power and wealth, yet at my age I have broken through to the 2nd Xianqi layer. Despite our different backgrounds, my fighting abilities are in no way any worse than yours. So in front of me, what gives you the presumptuous notion that you can declare that I am not a match for Meng Qing? Apart from a powerful and wealthy background, what do you have that I have not already earned for myself? Lin Feng's words stupefied everybody. Shi Qiong had just said that Lin Feng wasn't a good match for Meng Qing, and that she should be his woman instead. However, at that moment Lin Feng was proving otherwise. Shi Qiong relied on his wealthy and powerful background. He was 24 and had broken through to the 4th Xianqi layer. But Lin Feng didn't have a powerful and influential background. He was only 18 years old. His fighting power was extremely high and he had terrifying natural abilities to match. Apart from money and a family name, Shi Qiong had no basis to compete with Lin Feng. Lin Feng's natural abilities and fighting power were monstrous in comparison with Shi Qiong's. In my eyes, you are just like Ling Tian. Just because you are a little bit talented, you have grown too proud and too arrogant. In fact, you are just a nobody with a powerful family to support your little talent, that's all. You're nothing but a waste of breath, said Lin Feng emotionlessly. He was fixedly staring at Shi Qiong and insulting him. You injured Meng Qing, you tried to humiliate her. Today, no matter what, you will die. Shi Qiong's energy was moving faster. His facial expression was becoming colder and colder. Lin Feng had insulted him in front of millions of people. He had said that he was only a little talented and threatened that he would die no matter what. How aggressive. Well, I am curious to see how you intend to kill me. If you die today, don't worry, I will take good care of your woman, replied Shi Qiong with an evil smile on his face. When Lin Feng heard him, his deadly energy exploded in the air and he charged forwards. A deadly energy started to roll across the sky. Lin Feng's deadly energy was tearing through the sky. A black fissure had been torn in the atmosphere. Lin Feng's deadly energy contained a monstrous power, and it was also dangerously quick. Shi Qiong hadn't expected Lin Feng to charge at him so abruptly. He pulled a long face and suddenly moved backwards. However, Lin Feng was like the wind as he followed closely behind Shi Qiong, moving closer. Lin Feng's deadly energy was moving towards Shi Qiong at full speed, and his entire body was filled with murderous intent. Chapter 431. Despicable means one of Wednesday. Sorry if it's late. No edit yet update. Looked by Likey. The crowd was fixedly staring at the two silhouettes in the air. They were all extremely excited to watch the battle. Lin Feng was frivolous and aggressive. If he wanted to kill somebody, nobody could stop him from doing so. Shi Qiong had humiliated his woman Lin Feng, for Meng Qing's honor, had just sworn that Shi Qiong would die no matter what. At that moment, Shi Qiong hadn't anticipated that Lin Feng would attack so abruptly. Besides, his speed was absolutely terrifying. Lin Feng was only at the 2nd Xianqi layer, but he was already faster than Shi Qiong, who had broken through to the 4th Xianqi layer. Lin Feng was moving closer and closer to Shi Qiong. Lin Feng's deadly energy was also putting more and more pressure on Shi Qiong. It was terrifyingly fast and powerful. No, I can't die like this. If I let all of his deadly energy reach me, it will completely smother me and grind me into nothing, thought Shi Qiong, whose heart was invaded by coldness. That deadly energy was way too powerful, and it contained the determination of a sword. If that deadly energy could surround Shi Qiong, no matter how strong he was, he would be sliced into pieces. His entire body would be destroyed. Flood Dragon, shouted Shi Qiong in a deep voice. Pure qi started revolving around him in the atmosphere, and a flood dragon image appeared above Shi Qiong. It looked extremely lifelike as it roared bestially. It seemed like it was preparing to attack. Flood Dragon Warp Fist, shouted Shi Qiong furiously, and then his warp fist smashed through the atmosphere. His dragon crawled across his body and fused into his arm. Shi Qiong's arm now looked like a dragon's head, which was rushing towards Lin Feng. The dragon's eyes were fixedly staring at Lin Feng. At that moment, Shi Qiong wasn't running away anymore. Instead, he was charging forward to attack. A rumbling sound emerged in the atmosphere. The flood dragon seemed like it was going to destroy the earth and the sky. Lin Feng's eyes were ice cold. Lin Feng wasn't moving any longer, he was still. At this moment for Lin Feng there was only his sword. It was as if the entire world had been replaced with deadly energy and killing intent. Kill! 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 Kill him! Shi Qiong had dared humiliate Meng Qing. He had dared to assail her with obscenities. He had to die. That deadly energy seemed like it was emerging from Lin Feng endlessly. It was extremely pure and contained shocking murderous intent. It seemed like there was nothing between the earth and the sky except for deadly energy. The moonlight still looked dreary and desolate, just like an ice sculpture. But the people didn't notice at all. They could only sense that deadly energy filled with murderous intent. That deadly energy was nightmarish. Lin Feng had broken through to the second Qianqi layer, but was able to release such a devilish deadly energy. How far along the path did one need to cultivate in order to understand the sword as well as that powerful deadly energy? With his deadly energy, he was able to compete with a cultivator stronger than him by 2 cultivation layers, Shi Qiong. In the air, the old man who had created the illusion was staring at Lin Feng and looked glum. He despised Lin Feng. His natural abilities were terrifying. There probably weren't many people who could release a more powerful deadly energy than Lin Feng. On the side of the holy courtyard of Shuiyu, Duan Tianlang and Chu Zhanpeng were sitting next to each other and pulling a long face, especially Chu Zhanpeng, who hadn't expected Lin Feng's strength to be the stuff of nightmares. He suddenly had the impression that nothing would go the way he imagined. He had the feeling that killing Lin Feng wouldn't be as simple of a task as he previously thought. Lin Feng, with his strength, could already fight against cultivators of the 4th Qianqi layer. The people of the Luoxia sect, the Wanshou sect, the Dugu clan etc. all hated Lin Feng. At that moment they were all pulling a long face. Many people had witnessed Lin Feng's evolution over time, and at that moment, Lin Feng was already able to fight with a cultivator of the 4th Qianqi layer. With his natural abilities, what would happen if Lin Feng was still alive in 3 years' time? And what about in 5 years? What would Lin Feng be like at those moments? They didn't dare to think about it. Those finalists were all true geniuses, but they needed years upon years to acquire their current strength. Without them noticing, Lin Feng had already accomplished so much. 2 years ago, he was only at the Qi layer, then he had broken through to the Ling Qi layer and came to the imperial city. At that time, how many people had thought that Lin Feng would be fighting in this monumental competition? Only 1.5 years later? Who would have thought that he would be able to kill Ling Tian with a single sword? Who would have thought that he would be able to release such a monstrous deadly energy? Lin Feng had to die as soon as possible. We cannot let him live, thought many people at that moment. Their desire to kill Lin Feng was becoming more and more urgent with each passing moment. Letting Lin Feng live longer would be too dangerous. On the side of the Yu clan, an old white-haired man looked like he was having mixed feelings. Each time he saw Lin Feng's terrifying natural abilities, he couldn't help but think about her. Like mother, like son, actually Lin Feng really resembled his mother. They had the same terrifying natural abilities, the same determination, and they both had identical temperaments. If they wanted to do something, nobody on earth could prevent them from doing it. Lin Feng's sword was filled with deadly energy, which caused a black fissure to be torn in the sky. When it collided with the flood dragon warp fist, it almost destroyed the atmosphere, which started shaking violently. That sword filled with deadly energy had pierced through the flood dragon and continued moving toward Shi Qiong. It seemed like nothing could stop that deadly sword. Lin Feng, moving just like the wind, releasing even more monstrous deadly energy which increased the pressure toward Shi Qiong. Lin Feng's entire body was just like his sword. He was filled with killing intent which was overflowing. Shi Qiong looked incomparably glum. He roared aggressively and another flood dragon warp fist started to crash through the atmosphere once again. At the same time he moved backwards. He had to avoid getting close to Lin Feng no matter what. If he approached him, Lin Feng's deadly energy would devour him in an instant. Die! Shouted Lin Feng in a ruthless tone. His deadly sword moved forwards as it swallowed the flood dragon again, and continued to chase Shi Qiong. In front of Lin Feng's terrifying deadly sword, which was also filled with murderous intent, Shi Qiong was in a critical situation. The crowd was dumbstruck. They couldn't believe their eyes. Shi Qiong's strength was terrifying enough already, but when facing Lin Feng he found himself struggling to avoid death's door. Roar! An insane roar suddenly caused the atmosphere vibrate. Behind Shi Qiong a terrifying flood dragon appeared. It looked hideous and cruel, and it was fixedly staring at Lin Feng. Shi Qiong had released his spirit. He had had no choice but to use everything. Die! Lin Feng ignored the flood dragon and released even more black, deadly energy. His sword did not stop moving closer to Shi Qiong. Lin Feng was leaving no room for escape. Shi Qiong's face looked glum. His entire body was surrounded by a coarse and wild qi. His flood dragon bared fangs and brandished claws towards the deadly energy. Fusion. A terrifying bestial aura emerged around Shi Qiong's body, and then many silhouettes appeared. It seemed like a swarm of flood dragons filled the sky. At that moment, Shi Qiong looked like he had turned into a wild beast. He looked like an authentic flood dragon. The power of my flood dragon warp fist is at its peak when I fuse with my spirit, thought Shi Qiong at that moment. He almost looked half dragon and half human. He raised his head and unleashed a violent roar. His entire body was surrounded the wild and coarse qi. Die! Roar! Shi Qiong first shouted furiously, and then his flood dragon roared in a monstrous way. Shi Qiong's body looked like it was covered with dragon scales. He then punched through the air. His punch looked like a dragon streaking across the sky. It was moving straight towards Lin Feng. Boom! The sword filled with deadly energy and the flood dragon collided. At the collision point appeared a vast black light. In a flash, Shi Qiong and Lin Feng were swallowed by that blackness. They had been swallowed by it. The collision of their two attacks had resulted in the apparition of a terrifying energy. The crowd gasped with amazement. They were fixedly staring at the place where the two fighters were. The confrontation of two powerful geniuses was terrifying. Shi Qiong had fused with his flood dragon spirit. Lin Feng had only used his deadly energy, but it seemed like there was an endless quantity of deadly qi and energy. Lin Feng was fulfilling his word. He was going to kill Shi Qiong. Chu Zhanpeng, go and kill Lin Feng, interrupted a voice at that moment. It came from the bank of the lake, from the group of people of the holy courtyard of Shuiyu. Duan Tianlang was the one who spoke. His voice sounded indifferent and cold. Chu Zhanpeng was stupefied though. He looked like he didn't understand what Duan Tianlang meant. Shi Qiong is almost defeated. You should go quickly and kill Lin Feng, otherwise if you fight against him in a one-on-one battle, it will be a fierce battle. It's not even guaranteed that you will win, said Duan Tianlang slowly while staring at Chu Zhanpeng. Even though Chu Zhanpeng's cultivation level had increased, he was the same as Shi Qiong. He had recently broken through to the 4th Xianqi layer as well. Shi Qiong was the youngest officer of the Imperial City Guards. Relying on his cultivation level, skills and techniques, he definitely had what it took to become one of the 8 high officials. Chu Zhanpeng wasn't even sure that he was able to defeat Shi Qiong in a fight. Lin Feng could put so much pressure on Shi Qiong that there was no escape, which meant that he was also able to do the same against Chu Zhanpeng. Right now is the best moment to kill Lin Feng. You cannot let this opportunity slip by. If you fight against him in a fair battle, you will have no chance of escape, said Duan Tianlang, still trying to convince Chu Zhanpeng. Chu Zhanpeng looked irresolute. Going to kill Lin Feng at that moment was dangerous. Besides, in front of everybody, he would lose a great deal of face if he suddenly attacked Lin Feng by surprise. However, Duan Tianlang was telling him that if he waited, Chu Zhanpeng wouldn't be able to kill Lin Feng because of his deadly energy and might not even be able to escape. If he lost against Lin Feng, he would lose more than just face. Die! Shouted Lin Feng. His terrifying deadly energy rolled through the air. It was surrounded by a black light. Shi Qiong's body was blown away. His face turned deathly pale and blood burst out of his mouth. He had lost. Shi Qiong had been defeated by Lin Feng. How terrifying. Lin Feng must die. When Chu Zhanpeng saw that scene, he gnashed his teeth. A hurricane appeared around him as he spread his wings and he then streaked across the sky. His wings were emitting a whistling sound as he rushed into battle. Lin Feng, fight against me, shouted Chu Zhanpeng furiously. His silhouette then dashed through the sky and he nosedived towards Lin Feng, which made the entire crowd frown. Chapter 432. Lotus in the left, sword in the right. Thursday's one more to come. One of the 8 high officials was attacking. He was the first high official to join the battles. What surprised the crowd the most was that when Chu Zhanpeng was attacking, he gave absolutely no warning that he was going to do so. Was he attacking Lin Feng by surprise? Lin Feng was still battling against Shi Qiong when suddenly Chu Zhanpeng, went to attack Lin Feng before the battle was over. He was definitely taking advantage of Lin Feng's current situation. When the crowd saw that silhouette streak across the sky and then nosedive towards Lin Feng, they were all worried about Lin Feng. Chu Zhanpeng was extremely fast thanks to his legendary rock spirit. He was so fast that it was incredible. Shameless! Shouted Duan Feng at that moment while stamping onto the ground. When he saw Chu Zhanpeng attack, he couldn't help but shout out. His heart also twitched for Lin Feng. Even though Chu Zhanpeng had shouted something before entering the battle, he was too far away and it was only an attempt to justify a surprise attack. He was extremely fast, which made Duan Feng worry more about the safety of Lin Feng. Meng Qing's heart also abruptly started pounding. She released an ice-cold ice chi which shot through the air towards Chu Zhanpeng. But even if she wanted to stop him, it was already too late. In the blink of an eye, Chu Zhanpeng had already arrived next to Lin Feng. "Be careful!" shouted Meng Qing with all her power to warn Lin Feng. Lin Feng's eyes were ice-cold. With his incredible senses, Lin Feng had of course sensed that Chu Zhanpeng was attacking him from behind. However, his deadly energy was still crashing through the atmosphere toward Shiqiang. And Lin Feng couldn't change that. He could only rely on his incredible senses to avoid the incoming attack. The power of the wind enabled Lin Feng to move in an extremely agile way. As if he could float through the air without resistance at that moment, he was floating backwards. Psh! A sharp sound emerged in the air. Chu Zhanpeng's silhouette flickered and he abruptly adjusted his trajectory. He was aiming directly at Lin Feng and his speed was increasing. Lin Feng was stupefied how unbelievably fast. Chu Zhanpeng was so fast that Lin Feng didn't even have the qualifications to dodge the attack. Whoosh! Whoosh! The sharp wings converged on Lin Feng's abdomen. His clothes were torn to shreds as blood splashed out from 2 wounds. A terrifying power moved towards Lin Feng again. Chu Zhanpeng had already moved back and dived towards Lin Feng again, which blew him away for a second time. Lin Feng's face deathly pale. Lin Feng was clearly injured after such a brutal onslaught. Chu Zhanpeng had attacked Lin Feng with the element of surprise, and because of the speed in which he attacked, Lin Feng didn't have the time to defend and was actually injured. At the same time, the legendary rock continued beating its wings in the sky. Even though Chu Zhanpeng was taking advantage of a difficult situation, his strength was still incredible. He was extremely strong. He had attacked and injured Lin Feng in the blink of an eye. Meng Qing's silhouette flickered and she immediately appeared in front of Lin Feng, obstructing the path towards the injured Lin Feng. She released her ice chi which soared to the skies. Her face at this moment looked scary. "Meng Qing, get back!" Lin Feng raised his head and when he saw Meng Qing, he looked like he was scared and shouted out, which shocked Meng Qing. "I have already told you, all those who try to humiliate or harm you will die. Today, no matter what price needs to be paid, I will keep my promise," said Lin Feng, sounding determined, which stupefied Meng Qing. Immediately after, her beautiful face turned red. Lin Feng had sworn that he would kill Shiqiang no matter what. He would keep his promise, because he had said that for her. "Let me help," said Meng Qing, who couldn't help but worry about Lin Feng losing his life. Her ice energy made Lin Feng feel chills as he grew closer. "Let me do this alone," insisted Lin Feng while shaking his head. He caressed Meng Qing's hair, smiled and said, "I told you, from now on, I will be the one to protect you." When Lin Feng finished talking, he moved back and pulled Meng Qing away from the battle. Meng Qing looked at Lin Feng's back and felt proud. A magnificent and resplendent smile appeared on her face. That heartfelt smile made everything else in the world lose its splendor. When the crowd saw that pure and holy smile, they were dazzled. Her beauty was simply breathtaking. For such a beauty, they were ready to kill the gods and worship devils. Everybody who saw that scene started to feel that Meng Qing and Lin Feng were made for each other. They were soulmates. As far as Shiqiang was concerned, he was extremely far from being worthy of Meng Qing. No matter what, if he won or lost this fight, the real protagonist on that day was Lin Feng. Lin Feng was doing everything in his power to keep Meng Qing smiling, with a smile which dazzled everyone. Lin Feng turned his head back to his opponents. His face was no longer soft and gentle as when he was speaking to Meng Qing. There was only the endless coldness of his pitch-black eyes. His pitch-black eyes were filled with killing intent. He was fixedly staring at Shi Qiong and Chu Zhanpeng. Chu Zhanpeng. Lin Feng laughed out as if the name itself was a joke. The other day you stormed into the Celestial Academy to challenge me. How prestigious. You wanted to fight against me and so we agreed to have our fight today. Even though you were despicable and attacked me from behind, I do not mind. I will still fight you today. The members of the Holy Courtyard of Shui, you are only a despicable bunch. Nothing but a bunch of cowards and traitors. I have already grown used to their shamelessness, therefore, attacking me from behind is absolutely despicable, but I would expect nothing less from the scum of the Holy Courtyard, shouted Lin Feng, whose words echoed across the sky. He was humiliating Chu Zhanpeng and the entire Holy Courtyard of Shuiyu. Each and every person from the Holy Courtyard of Shuiyu was staring at Lin Feng with cold expressions, but none of them could find the words to reply. In front of someone stronger than you, words are useless. I, Chu Zhanpeng, will kill you and then nobody will dare to say that the way I attacked you was despicable. The people will continue to sing my praises and say that our battle was a magnificent display of my power, said Chu Zhanpeng while staring at Lin Feng in an ice-cold way. A moment before, Lin Feng had been injured by his attack, that's all. You're right, in front of someone stronger, words are useless. Such shamelessness and such despicable methods are really lamentable. Chu Zhanpeng, I will kill you. You and Shi Qiong will be buried here today. When Lin Feng finished talking, the crowd shivered. Lin Feng was still as audacious as before, even when standing before one of the 8 high officials and Shi Qiong, 2 extremely strong cultivators. Lin Feng sounded like he was already certain of his victory against the two. His deadly energy dashed into the skies. In Lin Feng's right hand, there was a black sword filled with a terrifying killing intent. At the same time, in his left hand, Lin Feng was condensing a terrifying pure qi. It was pouring into a vortex in his left hand. Lin Feng stretched out his left hand and the pure qi transformed into a black flame, which perfectly matched the black sword in his right hand. He looked truly formidable. But that wasn't the end. The black flame continued to absorb Lin Feng's pure qi as a black lotus slowly started to form in his hand. It was strangely beautiful. The black lotus, the grim fire black lotus. Boom, 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 boom. Everyone could hear the sound of their heart beating in their chest. They were astonished. They had thought that Lin Feng's deadly energy was his hidden card, but he still had even more up his sleeve. Lin Feng was still as shocking as ever. Every time people thought that he had shown his strength and power, they found out that they had only touched the surface of his true strength. Was that terrifying black lotus the reason for Lin Feng's confidence? In his left hand he held a calm and tranquil black lotus. In his right hand, he held a terrifying black sword which oozed killing intent, but they were shockingly both filled with the same monstrous deadly energy. Lin Feng was surrounded by deadly energy which fused into each of his hands. It was astonishing. Chu Zhanpeng was surprised and looked directly at Lin Feng's hands that held both the black lotus and the black sword. A trace of fear could be seen in his eyes. Everybody already knew how powerful the deadly energy was, but the black lotus in Lin Feng's hand also seemed incredibly powerful, maybe more so than the sword. Shi Qiong had already seen Lin Feng's black lotus and its terrifying power. Back then, Lin Feng had only broken through to the first Xianqi layer, but it was already enough to threaten his life when using it. At that moment, Lin Feng's black lotus looked much more powerful than in the past. Chu Zhanpeng, today I will show you that apart from being detestable and attacking by surprise, there is nothing else you can do before me, said Lin Feng, whose confidence made people shiver. He once again released a storm of deadly energy while talking, which filled the air around him. Chu Zhanpeng pulled a long face. His wings were beating slowly when suddenly, his silhouette flickered and he disappeared from his initial position. He had thrown himself towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng smiled coldly and stretched out his left hand. He then waved his hand and the black lotus suddenly started to open, which made Chu Zhanpeng quickly turn and retreat. With his legendary rock spirit, he can really run away, thought Lin Feng, ignoring the fact that Chu Zhanpeng had once again flew into the air ready to swoop down. Lin Feng took a step and jumped towards Shi Qiong. His deadly energy was crashing through the air with him. At that moment, Lin Feng had completely forgotten about his injuries. Shi Qiong pulled a long face. Lin Feng was definitely going to kill him no matter what because Lin Feng was doing this for Meng Qing. At that moment, Shi Qiong's heart violently pounded. He felt like he was facing a madman and that madman could not be reasoned with, he would only kill. Chu Zhanpeng, let's work together and kill him, shouted Shi Qiong while moving back at full speed. The crowd sighed. This battle was too unfair. There were two people grouping against one and one of the group was even a high official. The old man overseeing the competition didn't even try to stop such a battle from happening. Chapter 433. Piss off. Last one for Thursday. At that moment, the national competition seemed like a theater play. Nobody had anticipated such a thing. Who would have imagined that Lin Feng would fight against the high official Chu Zhanpeng and the youngest officer of the Imperial City Guards all by himself, one genius against two? Chu Zhanpeng and Shi Qiong were both incredible talents. However, Lin Feng's talent outshone them by far. That is why Shi Qiong and Chu Zhanpeng only needed to agree to work together for them to kill their mutual enemy. Chu Zhanpeng remained silent for a short while but eventually nodded in a cold and detached way while saying, "All right. Let's kill him together." Two geniuses were agreeing to work together and kill Lin Feng. At that moment, Lin Feng was cold and aloof. His pitch-black eyes looked emotionless and expressionless. He took a step forward and flew towards Shi Qiong while releasing an astonishing amount of deadly energy. Chu Zhanpeng had a legendary rock spirit, his speed was incredible, his claws were extremely sharp, and he was in a much better condition than Shi Qiong. Killing him would be harder than a weakened Shi Qiong. That was why Lin Feng decided to kill Shi Qiong first and then he would take care of Chu Zhanpeng. When Shi Qiong saw the deadly energy crashing through the atmosphere towards him, he pulled a long face. Lin Feng was determined to kill him first. His flood dragon spirit roared, and its gigantic eyes never left Lin Feng for even a second. The flood dragon wrapped around Shi Qiong's body and enveloped him completely. His arm looked like it was gathering an exceptionally dangerous energy. "Die!" shouted Shi Qiong loudly. The force of his flood dragon warp fist bombarded towards Lin Feng. The gigantic flood dragon was following behind Shi Qiong's fist as it raised its head to roar. Chu Zhanpeng obviously understood what Shi Qiong was planning, so he spread his wings and rushed to attack Lin Feng with unbelievable speed. His speed was incredibly shocking to witness. Two people attacking at the same time, one from the front, the other from behind, they were using such a despicable tactic to deal with the injured Lin Feng. Wind. A gentle breeze floated through the air. Lin Feng was calmly analyzing the wind as it blew over him. His body slightly shook, and his entire silhouette seemed like it had moved several thousand times, in different directions in the blink of an eye. Each of his moves seemed like it had a million variations and each would lead to a different destination. Lin Feng had fused with the very wind itself, and suddenly multiple silhouettes appeared. In the sky, there now stood a countless number of Lin Fengs. Huh! Shi Qiong was stupefied. He only saw Lin Feng and all those after images moving towards him. Their speed was incredible as they flew towards him from multiple directions like a strong gale. The deadly energy surrounding his body was growing more and more violent, more and more terrifying. "I don't think that you can fight against two people at the same time," said Shi Qiong. His flood dragon roared, and they rushed straight towards the group of Lin Fengs, ready to destroy everything that crossed its path. "Die!" shouted Lin Feng in a deep voice. Without mercy, he thrust out with his black sword which was filled with an immense deadly energy. Roar! Boom! The deadly energy and the flood dragon collided which caused the air itself to shake from the pressure. At the same time, Chu Zhanpeng had almost arrived at Lin Feng's back. His sharp claws were about to impale Lin Feng and rip a massive hole through his chest. Those claws were clearly aiming to rip Lin Feng's heart directly from his chest with one swoop. Get lost! Lin Feng spun his body around in the air, and his black lotus was pushed towards Chu Zhanpeng's direction. His black lotus contained a thick concentration of deadly energy and grim fire. Chu Zhanpeng was stupefied. His claws stopped in place. If he had continued with his attack, then his claws would have landed directly on the black lotus. Chu Zhanpeng spread his wings and abruptly came to a halt. After that, a purple light emerged from Lin Feng. Immediately that purple spirit rushed out and caught the black lotus as if it was another hand. Huh. The crowd was speechless. What was Lin Feng doing? Why was the purple spirit now holding the black lotus? After some consideration, the crowd understood Lin Feng's intention. His purple spirit seemingly had its awareness and could control the black lotus to attack Chu Zhanpeng if he came close. Even Chu Zhanpeng was dumbstruck when he saw this. Was such a thing even possible? Lin Feng could have his spirit use the black lotus to attack without even looking? At that moment, Lin Feng had already stopped paying attention to the black lotus behind him. His deadly energy burst into the sky, and his sword descended toward Shi Qiong. Without even glancing behind him to see his black lotus and Chu Zhanpeng, he released his deadly energy and attacked. Lin Feng's deadly energy seemed like it was endless, as if he had an endless amount of deadly energy within him. However, Shi Qiong wouldn't be able to continue carrying out such powerful attacks to defend against Lin Feng forever. The deadly energy was destroying everything. At that moment, Shi Qiong unleashed another Flood Dragon Warp Fist and used the force to propel himself back. But Lin Feng's sword still reached its target. There was a large wound across Shi Qiong's abdomen, but if he had been a little bit slower, that wound would have been through his heart. The deadly energy was putting immense pressure on Shi Qiong's wound, which caused a hideous expression to appear on his face. It was excruciating. He was barely able to breathe. Were two people working together really unable to defeat Lin Feng? Lin Feng didn't intend to give him time to contemplate. The multiple Lin Fengs appeared and rushed forward like the wind. They were getting closer and closer to Shi Qiong. The deadly energy was still adding a tremendous pressure onto Shi Qiong's body, and his chest was feeling tight. Ah! Shouted Shi Qiong, but his voice sounded weak as he was struggling for air. He felt completely dispirited. His courage was disappearing. There was nothing worse than dying. His shout was a shout of fear and despair. At the same time, it was incredibly weak and shrill due to the deadly energy crushing his body from all sides. At the same time, Chu Zhanpeng didn't stop moving, but the purple spirit did have its awareness. It was attacking with the black lotus every time that Chu Zhanpeng tried moving forwards. Chu Zhanpeng had no doubt that the purple spirit and black lotus would gravely injure him, or even take his life if he was careless. Die! Shouted Lin Feng with his expressionless black eyes. He raised both his hands into the air and slashed down with his sword, filled with killing intent. A rumbling emerged in the atmosphere. A brutal, deadly energy was pressuring and preventing Shi Qiong from dodging. Even though he managed to partly dodge the attack, blood burst out of his mouth, and his body was blown away. Lin Feng wasn't going to let him off so easily. His murderous intent was still filling the skies. He rushed forwards again and brandished his sword once more. Another strike and he would be able to kill Shi Qiong. That's enough. Stop! Shouted the old man coldly, which made the atmosphere shake and shocked the crowd. Lin Feng was a bit surprised. At the moment when he was about to kill Shi Qiong, the old man ordered them to stop. However, a moment before, when Chu Zhanpeng had joined the battle to help Shi Qiong kill Lin Feng, the old man hadn't said a word. Who couldn't see that the old man was abusing his power and authority to help Shi Qiong? Lin Feng obviously understood what was going on. His facial expression looked ice cold. His murderous intent and deadly energy were still filling the air. Lin Feng didn't even attempt to stop. Stop! Shouted the old man again. His voice was so sharp that it hurt Lin Feng's ears. Immediately after, he saw the old man take a step through the air and appear in front of him. He then punched through the air. That punch looked terrifying, and huge chi waves rolled through the atmosphere, causing Lin Feng's deadly energy to come to a halt. Immediately after, he moved back. Fifth Xian Qi layer. The crowd was stupefied. That old man had the strength of the fifth Xian Qi layer. He was much stronger than Lin Feng, and Lin Feng was still able to resist thanks to the deadly energy. His grim fire black lotus could defeat cultivators much stronger than Lin Feng, but only by around 1 or 2 layers. However, the current black lotus was not powerful enough to kill someone at the fifth Xian Qi layer. I told you to stop, did you understand? Shouted the old man in an extremely aggressive tone while releasing a cold energy. Lin Feng looked at the old man's face. He looked incredibly ugly and devious. What a crappy competition. It's a shame that it has you as its corrupt overseer. What a disgrace, said Lin Feng while looking at the old man. He then continued on an ice-cold tone. If I had known it was this corrupt earlier, I would never have bothered with this laughable joke of competition. It's run by evil, shameless bastards like you. Lin Feng didn't even care about the competition anymore. The people in power were just using their authority in this competition to play with him. Nobody was following the rules and abiding by a fair competition. Was this really how they planned to find geniuses? When the crowd heard Lin Feng, they were touched and sighed. Indeed, that competition hadn't been so great for Lin Feng. It was pointless. Say that again, said the old man while staring at Lin Feng with an evil look. His face was overflowing with killing intent. Say it again? Lin Feng smiled coldly and said, I said today no matter what happens Shi Chong will die and nobody will stop me. Your shitty excuse for a competition means nothing to me. Now piss off. Lin Feng's eyes were pitch black, and his murderous intent grew even more intense. His words had left everyone aghast. Lin Feng had told the old man to piss off. What was he thinking? Chapter 434. The mysterious apparition. The light of the full moon was shining down upon the still lake. At that moment, everybody was silently staring at that proud young man. He had killed Ling Tian. Then he began a battle to protect the honor of his woman and proudly declared that Shi Chong would die. Chu Zhanpeng even joined the battle and arrogantly flew into the air to launch a surprise attack. On top of that, at that moment in front of everybody, Lin Feng was telling a senior of the 5th Xianqi layer to piss off. On the ground, in the group from the holy courtyard of Shuiyu, Lin Qian raised her head and looked at that prideful young man. She couldn't help but sigh. If Lin Feng had stayed in the Lin clan, if Lin Qian had treated Lin Feng as part of the family instead of isolating, despising and humiliating him at that moment, their clan would be the pride of Yangzhou City and the Lin clan would have untold glory. Lin Feng's glory would be shared with her Lin clan, as well as the ownership of Yangzhou City. He would have become the pride of the clan, but at that moment, it was the absolute opposite. It was the first time that she had such a feeling. She was regretting her past actions against Lin Feng. Lin Feng was truly powerful and did not let anything stand in his way. He made Lin Qian start to realize how short-sighted she had been. At that moment, Chu Zhanpeng already couldn't fight against Lin Feng anymore. Lin Qian could see how terrifyingly strong Lin Feng had become. 2 years before, he was only trash of the Qi layer. In the Yu clan, there was someone who also had the same feeling as Lin Qian and was sighing. The patriarch of the Yu clan, Yu Qingshan, also sighed while looking at that young man, his grandson. If he had been a member of the Yu clan, he could have grown up alongside Yu Tianming, and they would have been as close as brothers. Who would have dared to provoke them if they were united by such a strong bond? In 5 years, Yu Tianming and Lin Feng will become the most talented cultivators of Shuiyu. At that moment, the old man who was overseeing the competition looked ferocious. Lin Feng had told him to piss off in front of millions of people. Shi Chong and Chu Zhanpeng stopped in place and were shocked. The Black Lotus had returned to Lin Feng and it was emitting a crackling sound in the air. Apart from those sounds, the atmosphere was deathly silent. All right, said the old man 3 times with deadly energy leaking from his body. Lin Feng released some more deadly energy which covered the skies. Lin Feng wasn't scared at all. He only looked cold and determined. Nobody could stop him. If things were pushed to that point, Lin Feng would give his all to kill all 3 of them. Lin Feng didn't want to use the evil swords. They were too terrifying and might attempt to devour his soul and take over his body. The evil swords were able to take control over his body like an evil parasite. However, if he ignored the danger and used the evil swords, everybody would know of their existence and strong cultivators would try to steal the evil swords from his body. Lin Feng would use them only if he had no other choice because the result would be a bloodbath. Then he would be forced to leave Shuiyu and hide somewhere that no one would ever find him. How should I deal with you? Said the old man evilly. In his eyes, Lin Feng had already signed away his life. Even if Lin Feng's natural abilities were extremely high, they were enemies, and the stronger an enemy was, the more urgently he needed to die. The old man had lived for so many years, He could obviously understand that the sooner one killed their enemies while they were weak, the better it was, and the longer one waited, the less chances one would have to kill them. Geniuses rose very quickly, but they could also fall just as quick because people were scared to let such geniuses live for too long when there were grudges between them. Deal with me. Lin Feng's eyes looked cold and detached, and some deadly energy was released from his body. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Kill him, said the old man to Shi Qiong, who was still behind him. They definitely had to take Lin Feng's life. Shi Qiong had lost his dignity. It was clear to everyone that Lin Feng had dominated and humiliated him. If the old man hadn't come out, Shi Qiong would be long dead. He wanted to kill Lin Feng and wash away his shame. This brat doesn't respect his elders and superiors. He must be punished, said Duan Tianlang at that moment. He wanted to kill Lin Feng more than anyone. Kill him. He's a disgrace to our national competition. He must die. The boy must die. At that moment, many voices were filling the air. It was the members of the Yu clan, of the Wanshou sect, and of many other influential groups that all wanted Lin Feng dead. Lin Feng glanced at the crowd but remained expressionless. All those people wanted to put an end to their grudge with his death. When the crowd heard the shouts from all the people who wanted to kill Lin Feng, they sighed. He had natural abilities, but wasn't that useless to him right now? He didn't have an influential background, and he had offended so many people who were working together to kill him. The world was cold and cruel. Strength was what mattered the most. There are no laws if there is no power to uphold them. Everything always came down to strength. If a person was strong enough, who could stop them from doing what they wanted? That national competition was a competition to select an outstanding genius. It was the competition of Shuiyu. There were rules, but Lin Feng had offended so many powerful groups. And because they wanted him to die, something as whimsical as a rule wouldn't stop them. Lin Feng only had himself as backing. He was desolate and lonely, like the moon floating in the sky above. Even though his natural abilities were more impressive than the majority of the 8 high officials, everything came down to strength. What a pity, thought many people while looking at the proud young man. They sighed again. What a pity. He had no other power to rely on, so he would fall to their schemes. Another genius would die. There were so many people shouting out for the death of Lin Feng. Yet there was nobody who was rushing out to his defense. Only Meng Qing was releasing her qi, ready to fight. If they wanted to kill Lin Feng, she would abandon everything and destroy them all. Did you hear? Everybody wants your life, said the old man while looking at Lin Feng. He was smiling and found the entire situation amusing. Lin Feng had no way out. Lin Feng smiled as he thought, "You all want me dead?" A powerful, deadly energy burst across the skies and flooded the atmosphere. Everyone could feel the killing intent and fury unleashed. "You all want to kill me? Go ahead and try," shouted Lin Feng furiously while smiling coldly. At the same time, Meng Qing rushed into the sky and released a bone-chilling ice chi. When the old man sensed their energies, he just smiled with mockery. The deadly energy was extremely powerful and Meng Qing's ice chi was extremely dense. But so what? They had no influence, no power supporting them. What could 2 people do alone? "All right, I will give it a try," said the old man coldly as he moved forward. When Lin Feng saw the old man move, he closed his eyes. He could sense the evil swords with his soul, and they were trying to move. Foolish old thing. At the moment when Lin Feng was about to unleash the evil swords, a voice filled the air. That voice wasn't loud, but everybody had heard each word distinctly. After the words were said, multiple ribbons of different colors flew across the lake. They were fluttering in the wind. It seemed like the sky was filled with colorful ribbons. They had invaded the entire sky. What's going on? When the crowd saw the colorful ribbons, they were all surprised. The old man was surprised as well. On top of that, those colorful ribbons all shot towards him with incredible speed. As if Lin Feng had realized something, he suddenly opened his eyes. But what he saw had left him stupefied. Those colorful ribbons? The scene seemed familiar. Back in the lovesick forest, those colorful ribbons had appeared at the most crucial moment and saved him. At that moment, Lin Feng was once again in a dangerous situation, and once again those colorful ribbons appeared, and they were moving straight towards the old man. It seemed like someone was coming to the rescue of Lin Feng. It was very strange. Lin Feng didn't understand what was going on. Those colorful ribbons arrived at the old man in the blink of an eye. The old man groaned coldly and raised his hand, which was as sharp as a blade. He started to cut through the colorful ribbons, but at the same time, many other colorful ribbons rushed towards the old man from every direction. The ribbons were all directly connected to the same place on the ground as they wrapped around the old man in the sky. They seemed like colorful bridges to heaven. It was incredibly beautiful. Who's that? Everyone was left speechless. They all looked around and tried to figure out who had initiated the attack. Finally, they saw multiple feminine silhouettes in the distance. Those colorful ribbons were held in their hands. In the middle of the women, there was a lithe and graceful woman wearing white clothes who looked as pure and holy as snow. Her magnificent style and elegance were unmatched under the heavens. However, the woman was wearing a bamboo hat, and a fine white veil was covering her face. She looked like a goddess. Who is she? When the crowd saw the woman, they couldn't help but ask. She looked aloof, but her beauty made everything else seem lacking. That holy and pure silhouette reminded people of when they first saw Meng Qing. Chapter 435. Looking down on everybody, what an incredible woman! At first glance, the crowd was gasping with amazement when they saw her. They were all fixedly staring at her silhouette. Their eyes couldn't move away. Many people wanted to see the under the veil. It was the same reaction as when people wanted to see Meng Qing's face. That woman was able to cause such emotion to stir in the people's hearts. Her aura was extraordinary. Lin Feng was also stupefied. It was the first time he had encountered this woman. He didn't know her and felt it was very strange. However, after concentrating on her aura, Lin Feng felt like they had encountered each other before, as if they had already met. He had the feeling that they had never gotten to know each other, but they had crossed paths. The feeling was extremely strange. Lin Feng couldn't explain it. Of course, the women didn't concern themselves with the thoughts of the crowd. They only noticed that many people were staring at them. Some people were even standing on the tips of their toes to try to see them, but it was already too late. The colorful ribbons had already created a bridge across the sky, and the veiled woman was sliding up the ribbons into the heavens. Immediately after, the crowd saw the other women jump onto other ribbons and glide into the sky. It was like a fairy tale. At that moment, the beautiful woman had already passed Lin Feng, who was still in the air. "Come all of you," said the woman in an indifferent voice. However, there was a tinge of warmth in her voice. Her colorful ribbons were fluttering in the wind as all the women had finally caught up with her. The entire group was composed of beautiful women. When they arrived near the mystical and mysterious woman, the ribbons suddenly surrounded the old man and completely restrained his movements. Who are they? When the crowd saw those mystical and mysterious women appear, everyone was asking themselves who they were. They were walking through the sky on flying ribbons as if they were walking on flat ground. The entire group was extremely strong, and they were all women. The crowd was intrigued and curious as to who this mysterious group was. Within the members of the Yu clan, many of them felt their hearts racing. It was them, or more precisely, it was her. Tung Wu Yao, the patriarch of the Wanshou sect, also started to shake. Since the last time he was warned, he already understood that the person he could not offend was her. The most astonished person was the head of the Yu clan, Yu Qingshan. When he saw that woman, he abruptly stood up. He was shaking from head to toe. His eyes were filled with shock and anger. That move astonished the people of the Yu clan. Why was the head acting so strangely? Why did he seem so shocked? How could a single person shock him to this extent? It's her. She came, thought a few well-informed people when they saw the events unfolding. A subtle sound spread through the air, interrupting everyone's train of thought. They only saw the old man was suddenly pierced by the multiple ribbons surrounding his body. He tried to escape, but when he saw the faces of all the women, he was astonished. "Get him," said the mystical woman. Her voice was extremely cold. In a flash, an endless stream of colorful ribbons floated through the wind towards the old man. At the same time, the other women shot into action. 6 women were encircling the old man, in front of him, behind him, on his left, on his right, under him and above him. He had absolutely no escape from any direction. A terrifying chi then emerged in the atmosphere. The myriad of colorful ribbons started to flutter. At the same time, a pure condensed in the air and the atmosphere sounded like it was breaking. All those 6 women were releasing their pure chi, which caused the air to tremble. The most astonishing thing was that the pure chi seemed like it was connecting itself to the ribbons. "Break!" shouted the old man furiously while pulling a long face. An incredible power was unleashed and bombarded the colorful ribbons, halting their advance. But each time the old man stopped one of the ribbons, the other ribbons would riddle the old man's body with attacks. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. The 6 women shouted something inaudible at the same moment. Suddenly, in the air, 6 colorful ribbons fused together. These ribbons were formed of pure chi, which meant that the pure chi of the 6 had combined. Formation. The crowd was astonished. Those 6 women were combining their pure chi. They were going to combine their power and use it to fight against the old man. "Die!" shouted the old man furiously. He attacked towards the ribbons once again. His body rose into the air, but it seemed like no matter where he went, the women would follow. Boom! A terrifying punch suddenly bombarded the atmosphere, and the atmosphere felt like it was shaking. An endless stream of pure chi filled the air, and it seemed like it could break through anything as it rushed against the old man's fist, knocking him back. The old man started to shake. His punch was easily deflected, which caused him to pull a long face. "Pure chi prison!" shouted the 6 women in unison. Their pure chi looked incredibly powerful. The crowd was dumbstruck. The 6 women were in perfection harmony with each other, as their pure chi formed a cage which imprisoned the old man. The old man's face was a sight to be seen. His face grew glum, and he began to shake in terror. He could clearly sense the power of the pure chi cage. How powerful! When the old man noticed that the pure chi was growing more violent over time, so he quickly shook his hand and formed a terrifying blade around his fist. It was made entirely from pure chi. "Arg!" the old man roared with all his might. His body rose into the air and a powerful punch smashed against the chi cage. The cage emitted a bright light on impact, and the sound of cracking filled the air. "Bind!" said another voice in an ice-cold tone, which caused the atmosphere to shake. The pure chi cage gave off a bright light and a terrifying pure chi emerged. The pure chi rushed straight towards the old man. Boom! A terrifying sound filled the air. The 2 chis collided. The old man was starting to shake as his attack had been overcome, and the threads of pure chi immediately started to seal off his body. He was struggling like a madman to break free from the binding, but he was unable to stop the pure chi from binding him. "Bind!" The colorful ribbons fluttered on the wind and imprisoned the old man. From head to toe, the old man wrapped up like a colorful mummy. His body was bound in the shape of a cross, and his face was deathly pale with blood was flowing from his mouth. Thump! 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 Millions of hearts were all violently pounding at the same time. They couldn't believe what they had witnessed. A short time before, the old man was controlling everything and acting in an insufferably overbearing manner. However, in the blink of an eye, he was tied and bound by multiple colorful ribbons. Those women were all extremely strong, but why did they attack the old man? The mysterious woman looked at the old man who was bound by the colorful ribbons and said indifferently, "You think that just because he has no influence and no power supporting him, you can strut around and kill him as you please?" Her words shocked the crowd. She was obviously pointing towards Lin Feng. That mysterious woman had come to the aid of Lin Feng. The old man was astonished. His face had turned deathly pale. There wasn't a single drop of color left in his body. "Today I have had enough. No matter how many influential groups step forward, if you continue to act like you are the kings of this world, I will show you what fate awaits you," said the mysterious woman while glancing at the crowd. "Since you refuse to abide by the rules and choose to break them, I will also ignore the rules. This national competition is over." When she finished talking, the mysterious woman turned to Lin Feng. A soft and tender expression appeared under her veil. Her coldness and aloofness had vanished. The twinkling of tears even started to appear in her eyes, but she quickly controlled herself. "He wanted to take your life. Now his life is in your hands. As far as the other two are concerned, the battle can continue. We will see if anyone has the courage to interrupt," said the woman while pointing at the old man and then to Shi Qiong and Chu Zhanpeng. Lin Feng had the power to kill the old man and continue his battle against Shi Qiong and Chu Zhanpeng. Nobody would be able to intervene. That woman was extremely aggressive. She looked down on everybody as if they were ants. Chapter 436. The Massacre. Pierre Fluffy frisked chapter from Saturday. Who is she? The onlookers were growing very curious. Who was this woman who had the courage to look down upon everybody? The people who were being looked down upon included members of the Yu clan, the Wanshou sect, the Dugu clan, etc. They were all extremely powerful and influential. The mysterious woman had appeared to save Lin Feng and bound the old man who was overseeing the competition. She wasn't even paying attention to the king who was still atop the dragons. How could the crowd not be astonished? What a proud temperament, whispered Yu Qingshan. His facial expression was strange. He was confused. That was his daughter, whom he hadn't encountered for more than 18 years. Back then, she already had the power to cause waves throughout the entire country. At that moment, though, she returned and wasn't even paying attention to her father. She treated him no better than she would a stranger. The old man and all those with influence attempted to bully Lin Feng, because they thought that Lin Feng didn't have anyone powerful supporting him. When watching how shamelessly Lin Feng was targeted, she wasn't able to control herself. No one could stop her from intervening. She was proud and aloof, but her message was clear. Lin Feng also had a powerful supporter behind him, and everybody should fear the consequences of angering Lin Feng's supporter. When Lin Feng heard the woman speak words of disdain toward the crowd, he was astonished. Her temperament was extremely familiar, but he could not remember where he had seen it. He was starting to have a deeper impression of déjà vu. Why was she helping him? Was she the owner of the lovesick forest? If she really was the owner of the lovesick forest, it meant that she was the beautiful woman who used to be the most outstanding female cultivator of Shuiyu. She had cut off all contact with her clan because she fell in love with a man without power or influence. Do we know each other? Asked Lin Feng while looking at the mysterious woman. He was too curious. The mysterious woman's heart felt like it had been ripped from her chest. How wouldn't she know Lin Feng? How many mothers couldn't recognize their son? Her eyes had started to grow moist under her veil. She slightly nodded. Of course they knew each other. First, you must deal with your current situation, and after that I will tell you everything, said the woman while trembling. It was taking all of her power to remain calm. All right, replied Lin Feng curiously while nodding. It seemed like many things were still hidden from him. There were many secrets in this world, and it might require more time to understand them all. Go and finish your battle with those two. No need to be worried about any further interruptions. I will kill anyone who attempts to get involved in this fight, said the mysterious woman with a coldness appearing on her face. She looked extremely aggressive. If anyone got involved, she would kill them. No influence, no support. She wanted everybody to know that nobody could bully and humiliate her son. All right, nodded Lin Feng solemnly. The members of the Yu clan, the Wanshou sect, etc., didn't make any attempts to intervene. They looked aggressive and arrogant, but the mysterious woman had loudly stated that she would kill anyone trying to intervene. So who would dare to intervene? It seemed like many influential people already knew the identity of the mysterious woman, and everyone who knew her identity was scared. No one dared to speak a word without thinking it over several times. Lin Feng turned his head and looked at Shi Qiong and Chu Zhanpeng, while releasing a terrifying deadly energy. Shi Qiong had to die for Mengqing, and Chu Zhanpeng's hatred of Lin Feng was extremely intense. Besides, Chu Zhanpeng attacked him by surprise, which was cowardly and despicable. Lin Feng would not spare him. Today would see the death of a high official. Lin Feng moved forwards and quickly arrived in front of Shi Qiong. He didn't need to waste any power being cautious anymore. Nobody would disturb him. Lin Feng could focus his entire concentration on the opponents he was fighting. A rumbling sound filled the air, and deadly energy crashed towards Shi Qiong's direction, which made him frown. Shi Qiong was pulling a long face. Who was that mysterious woman and why was she protecting Lin Feng? Besides, she had also had the old man restrained and said his life was in Lin Feng's hands. The flood dragon spirit appeared once again behind Shi Qiong. He looked both ferocious and frightened at the same time. Lin Feng was more outstanding than him on every possible level. A moment before, if the old man hadn't intervened, Shi Qiong would have already died. Chu Zhanpeng, let's fight together, said Shi Qiong while glancing over to Chu Zhanpeng. Chu Zhanpeng looked serious and solemn as he nodded. He was also curious to know who that mysterious woman was. Why was she able to act so domineering and imposing? Yet nobody dared to utter a word against her. Die! Shouted Lin Feng. His deadly energy poured into the atmosphere, as he flew like the wind in Shi Qiong's direction. His target Shi Qiong had not changed. He was going to kill Shi Qiong and then he would fight against Chu Zhanpeng. Roar! The flood dragon howled as Shi Qiong charged forwards. It seemed like a flood dragon was trying to emerge from his body and into reality. At the same time, Lin Feng's deadly energy and Shi Qiong's flood dragon collided at full power. Chu Zhanpeng! Roared Shi Qiong. Chu Zhanpeng understood what Shi Qiong meant. He released his large wings once again from his back. It seemed like he had transformed into a gigantic legendary rock. He spread his wings as his silhouette flickered. His body streaked across the sky and almost instantly he was closing in on Lin Feng. Get lost! Lin Feng's purple spirit rushed straight at him, while Lin Feng's grim fire condensed in his hand. After a split second, a black lotus was formed and immediately moved in Chu Zhanpeng's direction. A calm and deadly energy invaded the atmosphere. The purple spirit caught the black lotus in the air and swiped it in Chu Zhanpeng's direction, which caused him to retreat in a hurry. At the same time, Lin Feng took another step toward Shi Qiong. Nobody would prevent him from killing Shi Qiong. His deadly energy started to become even more violent as it rushed through the air. Die! Shouted Lin Feng as a terrifying, deadly energy rushed forward with the intent to kill. A rumbling sound unceasingly spread across the sky. It looked like nobody could stop that surge of deadly energy from reaching its target. Lin Feng was closing in on Shi Qiong with the intent to kill. When Shi Qiong saw a black sword start to move in his direction, his expression grew even more ferocious. Lin Feng seemed like he was becoming stronger during their battle. That deadly energy was moving forwards with an indomitable will. Lin Feng wanted Shi Qiong dead, and nobody could stop him. His killing intent came from the depths of his heart to form his deadly energy. The power of Lin Feng's deadly energy was improving thanks to his incredible comprehension ability. Lin Feng would stay true to his promise and kill Shi Qiong. Shi Qiong needed to die, that was Lin Feng's deepest desire. His murderous intent was unbreakable. Gotcha! The atmosphere seemed like it was starting to shatter. His sword was lacerating everything in its path toward Shi Qiong. Only despair was left in Shi Qiong's eyes. Was he going to die? Shi Qiong was the youngest officer of the Imperial Guards. He had practiced the Warp Fist and broken through to the 4th Shanqi layer. He was extremely strong. He was considered to be a top genius of the Imperial City, but at that moment, at the national competition of Shuiyu, it seemed like he was going to die at the hands of Lin Feng. When he thought back to what he said to Meng Qing about Lin Feng being unable to compete with him regarding influence and power, he felt like he was ridiculous. He had despised Lin Feng when he said that he would die no matter what. But at that moment he was going to die. Shi Qiong calmly looked at the black sword moving towards him, and then everything suddenly came to an end. His heart was no longer beating, and the life had already left his eyes. Lin Feng stayed true to his word. Shi Qiong was dead, and nobody could stop him. He's dead. The crowd could feel their hearts twitching. Another genius had fallen. He had died by Lin Feng's hands. Lin Feng still looked as emotionless as before. His face only had room for a terrifying, murderous intent. He slightly moved his purple spirit, and the black lotus flew towards him, which astonished the crowd. It seemed like he could control the black lotus with his mind. No one could understand how such a thing was possible. They obviously didn't know that Lin Feng had practiced the surplus souls technique, and he could split his soul into many surplus souls. Lin Feng could already divide his soul into 10,000 surplus souls. The purple spirit which had been holding the black lotus then fused with another surplus soul, so he could control his spirit and the black lotus while fighting. "Now it's your turn," said Lin Feng while stretching out his hand that was holding the black lotus. He was speaking slowly, which made Chu Zhanpeng narrow his eyes. Chu Zhanpeng then smiled coldly and said, "I have a legendary rock spirit, which grants me incredible speed. How do you intend to kill me if you cannot catch me?" "You are not the only person in the world who can use a spirit," replied Lin Feng indifferently. Immediately after, a dragon's roar spread through the air, causing the atmosphere to vibrate. A dragon had appeared behind Lin Feng. Lin Feng had a second spirit. When the crowd saw the other spirit, they were astonished. Each and every single person was dumbstruck. Chapter 437. What kind of life? Second of Saturday's roar. The dragon roared. Besides, there was more than a single head, and they were all roaring. That dragon had 7 heads which looked down at the crowd, causing their souls to tremble in fright. Dual spirit. The crowd was astonished. Lin Feng had hidden something else. He had his purple spirit and a dragon spirit, and when considering that dragon's chi, it seemed much more terrifying than Lin Feng's purple spirit. Of course, some people had already recognized the spirit, and all of those who could were particularly dumbstruck. That was the heavenly dragon spirit. It was the spirit of the Yu clan. Lin Feng surprisingly had the spirit of the Yu clan. In other words, the blood of the Yu clan was flowing through his veins. When people discovered that, they were gobsmacked. Many thoughts were circulating at full speed through their brains. Was Lin Feng a member of the Yu clan? No, it can't be. Suddenly, a few people looked as if they had understood something incredible. It couldn't be. Lin Feng was born in Yangzhou City. He couldn't be a member of the Yu clan. Besides, if he was a member of the Yu clan with such incredible natural talent, would Yu Qingshan have allowed Lin Feng to be bullied in such a way? He would have already got involved. Wait. A great deal of people were stuck trying to understand the situation. Their hearts started pounding as they all thought of an answer. If the blood of the Yu clan flowed in somebody's veins, it didn't necessarily mean that the person was a member of the Yu clan, or that they were named Yu. There was another possibility, the possibility that a member of the Yu clan had a child outside of the clan which inherited the blood spirit. When the crowd thought about that possibility, they also looked to the mysterious woman in the sky. 18 years ago, there was a woman from the Yu clan who was so gifted that she shocked the entire country. However, because she fell for someone against the clan's wishes, she had cut off ties with the Yu clan and was never heard from again. That mysterious woman must be the same woman who disappeared 18 years ago. Yu Menghe. She had disappeared after she went against her family because of the man she loved. Lin Feng was stood in the sky with that very woman. He was 18 years old with the blood of the Yu clan running through his veins. The last time at the Mount Sword, Yu Qingshan also provided a small assistance to Lin Feng. Thoughts were racing at full speed. Many people were dumbstruck and others felt their hearts pounding. The truth was already crystal clear to those influential powers. The one who was the most outstanding female cultivator in the country, who disappeared 18 years ago, was standing in the air in front of them. She was the mysterious woman. Others began to gradually understand the situation. Yu Menghe thought many different factions while looking towards the Yu clan. They all glanced at Yu Qingshan, the head of the Yu clan, for a second to confirm their suspicions. From his reaction, it was definitely Yu Menghe. Lin Feng must be her son. Who was the person who said that Lin Feng had no influence and no one supporting him? Who would dare to anger someone who was one of the most amazing cultivators of the country from 18 years previous? Who knew how strong she had become within the past 18 years? The crowd was both terribly excited and puzzled at the same time. They looked at Lin Feng, confused as to what type of life he had lived so far. After all, Lin Feng was only 18 years old and he probably didn't know about the events of the past. He didn't know the full story regarding him and his parents. How could he make the connection? Lin Feng had no idea of what other people were thinking. Concerning Chu Zhanpeng, he had already seen the blood spirit of the Yu clan, the heavenly dragon spirit. He had never thought that Lin Feng would have this spirit since he was born in Yangzhou City. Besides, many of the members of the Yu clan were also shocked when they saw Lin Feng's spirit. The blood spirit of their clan? And on top of that it had 7 heads. Sigh. Yu Qingshan sighed deeply. He slightly closed his eyes and didn't open them for a long time. A painful smile could be seen on his face. Why were the heavens so cruel towards him? His daughter Yu Menghe was the most gifted cultivator that the Yu clan had been blessed with in generations, but she cut off all ties with the clan. Now, his grandson grew up without knowing that he had the blood of the Yu clan was flowing within his veins. His dragon spirit even had a total of 7 heads. Only Yu Tianming could match his incredible power. What's that? At that moment someone looked at the different heads of the dragon. There was a bestial white light shining from one of the heads. It looked deathly pale and was releasing a bestial qi. It looked gloomy. That is a shaman spirit. The spirit that belonged to the Wanshou sect. It was Teng Wuyao's spirit. How could Lin Feng also have a shaman spirit? Rumor said that the heavenly dragon spirit could consume ferocious beasts and spirits as their own strength. When had Lin Feng's spirit come into contact with a cultivator who possessed a shaman spirit? The crowd looked at the Wanshou sect and more precisely at Teng Wuyao. They only saw that Teng Wuyao looked particularly glum at that moment. He was fixedly staring at Lin Feng with enormous killing intent being released. Lin Feng had a heavenly dragon spirit. No wonder Wu Zhan had disappeared without a word. Lin Feng killed him and consumed his spirit. When Teng Wuyao thought about how his son had been killed by Lin Feng, his face grew even more ferocious. His eyes wanted to kill Lin Feng using only his stare. However, at that moment, Lin Feng wasn't paying attention to people's expressions of surprise or to Teng Wuyao's murderous intentions. He was focusing all of his attention on Chu Zhanpeng. The other day you challenged me to a one-on-one fight and then today you attacked me by surprise with another person, but I will still honor your request for a fight. I know that you harbor killing intent. I will give you the opportunity you need. I want to see what Chu Zhanpeng, the high official, can do apart from attacking people by surprise or being shameless and arrogant. I want to see if your arrogance and pride is justified. Lin Feng was fixedly staring at Chu Zhanpeng and releasing a deadly energy which moved through the atmosphere towards Chu Zhanpeng's. Lin Feng's purple dragon spirit and his heavenly dragon spirit circled the sky. Their gigantic evil-looking eyes were staring directly at Chu Zhanpeng like he was food. Being observed by 2 large monsters whose eyes looked particularly ruthless made Chu Zhanpeng feel even less comfortable. Spirit fusion! Shouted Lin Feng in a deep voice. In a flash, his 2 spirits slowly started to fuse together. The gigantic purple dragon was combining into the heavenly dragon spirit. Roar! A loud roar reverberated through the atmosphere. After fusing together, Lin Feng's spirits were releasing a terrifyingly powerful qi. His 2 spirits had fused. Die! Shouted Lin Feng furiously. In his left hand he had the black lotus, in his right hand he still had his black sword. Coupled with his spirit fusion, Lin Feng looked like an unstoppable monster. He couldn't lose. Chu Zhanpeng is doomed, thought most of the people watching. They didn't even dare to believe otherwise. Chu Zhanpeng was ranked 6th amongst the high officials and was going to lose to Lin Feng. But Lin Feng was so incredible and awe-inspiring that they couldn't help but admire him. Let's fight! Shouted Lin Feng. His deadly energy crashed through the air emitting a rumbling sound. His body then flew through the air in Chu Zhanpeng's direction. In the sky there was only deadly energy as far as the eye could see. Chu Zhanpeng's wings were flapping in the air but he looked dumbstruck. Lin Feng had a black lotus in his left hand and a terrifying black sword in his right. What a monster! Hey! A sharp sound emerged from the legendary rock's mouth. A few threads of pure qi turned into blue and green lights which were as sharp as claws, that shot towards Lin Feng. Pierce! Said Lin Feng while raising his deadly sword. It seemed like it could annihilate anything in its path. In the blink of an eye Chu Zhanpeng's attack was shredded into nothing. Besides, the deadly energy in the atmosphere didn't stop moving. It still crashed through the atmosphere in Chu Zhanpeng's direction. Chu Zhanpeng spread his wings and his silhouette flickered. He flapped his wings with such power that it created a small hurricane in the air. At the same time, his wings continued flapping as he turned away in an attempt to escape. Surprisingly, he didn't have the courage to fight against Lin Feng any longer after his attack was so easily destroyed. "Die!" shouted Lin Feng while attacking with his sword while rushing forward like the wind. At the same time, Lin Feng's fused spirits roared and charged forwards. Many purple lights were twinkling on the body of the heavenly dragon. All of its movements were monstrously fast. It was tyrannical. Those purple lights shot out like snakes, but they moved much faster and were much more brutal than any ordinary snake. "Roar!" The dragon roared. Its 7 heads started to shake. It seemed like something was propelling Lin Feng through the air. He was moving extremely fast, and looked like his power was being increased by several folds. Whoosh! The purple snakes had caught up with Chu Zhanpeng and wrapped around his body, binding him. "Lacerate!" shouted Chu Zhanpeng furiously. His wings were sharper than most swords, so the majority of the purple snakes were lacerated, but the purple light was growing more and more, making it more painful as he cut the snakes. The dragon started to breathe a purple light from its mouth, which strengthened the purple spirit further. The snake then charged at Chu Zhanpeng's body without restraint and bound every inch of his body in place. Chapter 438. The Death of a High Official. Fluffy First of Sunday, what a terrifying spirit! Chu Zhanpeng possessed a legendary rock spirit and his strength was in his speed, but Lin Feng's purple spirit, after the fusion, had breathed out an incredible number of purple snakes which moved as fast as lightning. They were even faster than Lin Feng, who could move with the wind. Chu Zhanpeng was restrained by the purple snakes in an instant. He was completely smothered by them. A terrifying and sharp sound emerged in the atmosphere as the purple snakes surrounding Chu Zhanpeng's body started breaking apart. In the middle of those purple snakes, Chu Zhanpeng unleashed a terrifying power. In a flash, the myriad of purple snakes had vanished. However, at the same time, Lin Feng had already arrived, and his shocking deadly energy replaced the purple snakes that surrounded Chu Zhanpeng. Chu Zhanpeng had just destroyed the purple snakes when he noticed the deadly energy surrounding him. It was coming so fast that Chu Zhanpeng didn't even have time to dodge, he could only try to block it. "Arg!" Chu Zhanpeng shouted furiously, as a pure brutal qi rose into the air, and the incomparably sharp wings of the legendary rock started swiping towards the deadly energy. Boom! This is it. Lin Feng's deadly sword pierced through Chu Zhanpeng's legendary rock spirit, and a fountain of blood sprayed into the air. Chu Zhanpeng unleashed a scream of agony as he used pure qi to propel himself backwards. He needed to escape at all costs. "No! Zhanpeng!" shouted Chu Qing at that moment. He couldn't help but throw himself towards Lin Feng like a bolt of lightning crossing the skies. But his speed crossing this large distance was a fraction slower than Lin Feng's sword. Lin Feng's entire body released a powerful, deadly energy as his sword filled with killing intent. Lin Feng took another step forwards. His dragon roared as the terrifying qi crashed into the dragon's body. Lin Feng wasn't even phased as he continued forward with his sword. "This is it." Lin Feng sliced down with his sword. Another spray of blood filled the air, and the same horrible shriek could be heard again. Chu Zhanpeng's body was covered with blood from head to toe. His face was scarlet red and painted with blood. He no longer had the power left to fly anymore, and his body started to plummet towards the ground. At the moment when Lin Feng was attacking Chu Zhanpeng's plummeting body, Chu Qing had joined the battle. He had arrived beneath Chu Zhanpeng and unleashed his pure qi in Lin Feng's direction. "Die!" shouted Chu Qing furiously as he punched through the air. His fist unleashed a sharp qi towards Lin Feng. Chu Qing's face was filled with murder when he saw the qi about to reach Lin Feng. Wind! As if Lin Feng hadn't seen Chu Qing's attack, his silhouette flickered, and just like the wind he drifted along the sky. His terrifying qi rolled through the atmosphere. Chu Qing flew into the sky and in a flash, he was at the same altitude as Lin Feng. It wouldn't be easy for either side to miss an attack from this distance. "Die!" shouted Lin Feng in a deep voice. Under the moonlight, many images of Lin Feng appeared. Lin Feng passed by Chu Qing as if he was never there. They looked like strangers passing each other on the street. Even though Chu Qing was standing in his path, Lin Feng continued past him and moved towards Chu Zhanpeng. At the same time he released a black object from his hands which rushed towards Chu Qing. Chu Qing suddenly lowered his head and saw a huge wound had appeared in his chest. There was a black lotus that had landed on his chest. As the flames penetrated into his body, his chest felt like it was on fire. The lotus had burned a hole through his entire chest. Oh! A horrible and blood-curdling shriek filled the air. Immediately after, the crowd saw Chu Qing's body was burnt black. Fire! That black lotus had unleashed condensed grim fire which burnt Chu Qing into ashes. How scary! The crowd was shocked, and their hearts were pounding restlessly. The patriarch of the Haoyu sect, Chu Qing, could be burnt alive by Lin Feng's black lotus with such little effort? All the members of the Haoyu sect stood up and fixedly stared at the black flames. In a flash, the last of Chu Qing's body was turned to ashes and disappeared in the wind. He had been burnt alive. He was dead. The patriarch of the Haoyu sect, Chu Qing, was no more. Besides, it wasn't over. Lin Feng, after attacking Chu Qing with his black lotus, continued to release his deadly energy which crashed downwards towards Chu Zhanpeng. His deadly black sword also continued on its path and descended from the sky. The black light from the deadly energy was illuminated by the pale moonlight. It was strangely beautiful. Lin Feng's deadly sword was about to reach Chu Zhanpeng, who was currently cowering in fear. Suddenly Chu Zhanpeng looked terrified. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. His eyes were filled with resentment, grief and many other feelings. However, nothing could be changed. Chu Zhanpeng was one of the 8 high officials and a genius cultivator. He would never have thought that a little insect who was only at the Qi layer would one day become strong enough to kill him. He had destroyed the Yunhai sect and completely disregarded all of its members, but Lin Feng continued to grow despite adversity. Back then, Lin Feng was only a cultivator at the Qi layer. He was nothing to Chu Zhanpeng, but at that moment, he had become an unbelievable genius who could kill one of the 8 high officials. Splash! Chu Zhanpeng's body was blasted into the water of the lake with a loud splash. Water splashed everywhere as his blood dyed the water with a tinge of red. Then thick red blood spread across the surface of the lake. At that moment, Chu Zhanpeng and his father Chu Qing were reunited. Every single member of the Haoyu sect was shaking. They were dead. The patriarch of the Haoyu sect had just died, and now his son was killed. This was the end for the Haoyu sect. Besides, nobody was left to avenge them. Who would dare to fight against Lin Feng? Chu Qing was killed by him in an instant. The crowd looked at the proud young man and felt like the entire competition had been a dream. That outstanding young man had astonished them time after time again, causing them to be left in disbelief. He was offering the most outstanding and dazzling of shows. From that day, Lin Feng would be a ranked high official, immediately entering at the 6th position. Ling Tian was dead, Shi Qiong was dead, Chu Qing was dead. Chu Zhanpeng, the 6th high official, just died. And they were all killed by Lin Feng. Nothing could stop Lin Feng from becoming the 6th high official of Xueyu at that moment. On the side of the holy courtyard of Xueyu, Duan Tianlang was left mouth agape. He was fixedly staring at Lin Feng with murderous intentions. They were all dead and no one had managed to kill Lin Feng. Besides, he was her son. Luo Shui was also pulling a long face. Initially, he still wanted to avenge his fellow disciples Bing Yuan's death. However, at that moment, he had already given up on the idea. Killing Lin Feng? He would just get himself killed instead. At Luo Shui's side there was Lin Qian. She looked absolutely desperate and pitiful at that moment. Chu Zhanpeng, her only hope, was dead. Besides, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Chu Zhanpeng's death was directly caused by her. If she hadn't taken him to get revenge on Lin Feng, Chu Zhanpeng would never have encountered Lin Feng, and they wouldn't have been led down this path. Chu Zhanpeng would never have a reason to make attempts on Lin Feng's life if it wasn't for Lin Qian pushing him. The events which caused his death were all her fault. Because of her, the Lin clan had collapsed into ruin and a never-before-seen genius was expelled from the clan. Because of her, the Haoyu sect had lost its patriarch and junior patriarch. The entire sect would be removed from history. The patriarch of the Haoyu sect had died after joining a fight between juniors. Chu Zhanpeng had died after attacking Lin Feng by surprise. The members of the Hao Yu sect felt like there was no longer any prestige remaining. Many of the members would leave and the other sects would tear apart the remains of the Hao Yu sect. But Lin Feng wasn't thinking about what would happen to the sect now. He was looking at the colorful ribbons and the old man being restrained. At that moment the old man looked deathly pale. There wasn't a single trace of color on his face. The regret was written all over his face, but he couldn't change his actions even if he wanted to. What he had done was catastrophic, he had provoked her. His life was at their mercy and nobody would come to his rescue. Nobody would even think about trying to save him. The old man understood exactly what identity this woman held. Nobody could save him from death. The old man had a great deal of power and influence on his side, but today he was going to die. The old man hated himself for his own stupidity. He hadn't even considered the possibility of Lin Feng having a powerful support behind him. He foolishly believed that Lin Feng was only still alive because he had luck on his side. When Lin Feng saw the old man, his facial expression became cold, and he released more deadly energy which fiercely cut through the air. You thought that you could bully me because I have no backer. That's why you abused your power to help Shichong fight against me. You tried to make it so that I, Lin Feng, had no choice but to die. Now your life is in my hands. Is there anything you have to say for yourself? Asked Lin Feng coldly. If the old man hadn't directly interfered and prevented him from finding Meng Qing wouldn't have been injured. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.